Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of 22 Man Game. I'm Jared. That's Damon. It is July 16th, 2025. Training camp just around the corner. Damon, how have you been?
I have been great. I've been excited. I've been looking forward to this. Um, if people don't know, I do another podcast here about basketball, but football I also enjoy, and I know you do as well. And I'm very excited to talk about it with you. How about yourself? How are you?
I've been all right. I've been grinding on, is it Spot Rack or is it I've heard
I don't know what that
like
is.
Zach Levine call it SPO track. It's like the cap number website for sports contracts, so you can like
Mm.
look at how much people sign for.
Say
Been
Zach
grinding that.
Levine. Did you mean Zach Lowe,
I
or did you
so
mean Zach
did. I
Levine?
so did.
Okay.
Actually, Zach Levine. Zach Levine started another podcast with, I think it was B-Ball Paul, and that anyway. Yes, with Zach Lowe. I couldn't find the L name. Whatever. I'm more of a football guy, which is why I'm doing 22 man game and not 2 man game. Uh, but super excited to jump into it. And to be part of the Ethical Ball podcast network that has been freshly founded. Damon, what does ethical ball mean to you in the context of this pod?
I won't get into it like too much because we already had the whole ethical ball thing. You can go watch that video if you haven't. But basically, sports media I think is very negative. Lots of toxic masculinity, which I don't know if I mentioned in my ethical ball thing, especially I think prevalent in football. I feel like people that really like football, um, their opinions of players or other sports can be like soft. That guy's soft or well, this and that. Why don't you just do that? And I feel like that just kind of is not healthy, obviously, and it's been a long-standing tradition. And I think there isn't enough variety in how the sport is covered, and just a genuine appreciation for what they're doing, advancements and stuff, things like that. That I think is going to be worth talking about here. Like we're not going to get into it all today, but some examples I can think of, like when the Guardian caps first became a thing for players to wear. Um, People like make fun of players that wear them in games because it looks kind of silly, but CTE, concussions, those kind of things, big deals in the NFL. And it's like, okay, they're trying to not get concussed and have like lifelong consequences. Why are you making fun of them? Because it looks a little silly. So stuff like that is just what I don't like to see. And I feel like it's a very common kind of thing in football, and I want to cover it in a way that's not that. And I think that we can do a great job of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point, and I really love hard hitting defensive players, but I think there's a difference between respecting passionate and aggressive play and demeaning players for wanting to prioritize their own safety. And I know we also talked about last night over text, like the Kevin Love sort of mental health article that he put out a number of years ago, and how athletes are starting to be more transparent about their emotional and mental health experiences playing sports. And I think creating a platform and a podcast where we are creating space for those kinds of conversations, I think is also important, right? Respecting the players as people and not just vehicles for our own entertainment, that we don't give the full breadth of humanity to. So yeah, I think I'm excited to do that and to celebrate the game as a whole, which I think is where we wanted to start today. We're going to wrap up the episode by giving kind of our 3 to 5 favorite and least favorite offseason moves across the league. But before that, we wanted to kind of talk about our own fandom. We are both Lions fans, but also what got us into football, what has kept us into football, those kinds of things. And so I'll let you start us off. Why don't you take us into
Sure.
your football journey?
Before I do, I will say, like our video, comment, subscribe to Ethical Ball if you haven't.
Well, I
For this
figured they
and
already
two-man game.
had. It's the only reason I didn't say
Fair.
anything is
Fair.
everyone here will already like, comment, and subscribe within the first few
Yeah.
moments. Like,
You
comment,
already
and
know.
subscribe to Ethical Ball and 2 Man Game, and send us cash.
Otherwise,
Venmo
I'll
is
never say my story. If you don't, that the video will just end for you right now. So
it's a choose your own adventure. We check your Venmo feed, and
game
if we
over.
haven't received anything, end of pod buckets. We move on.
Right. But anyways, yeah, my football journey is interesting. I don't think it is typical of your normal fan, I would imagine. So I grew up, of course, in Galveston, Texas, like I've talked about on other podcasts. Closest major city is going to be Houston. So when I was a kid, like really, really young, the Texans didn't exist yet. And the Oilers had, of course, relocated. So being that young, I didn't really have like a lot of care in the sport from like a toddler age. The first team I can really remember liking are the Colts, which is super random, and I think it's I want to say Super Bowl 41. That number could be totally wrong. Colts Saints, I believe, was the matchup, and I watched it at like my mom's friend's house, and the Colts were winning, and I was like, this must be my favorite team, because that's what you do as a child. And I don't think that lasts very long, but I really remember paying attention to, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, Dwight Freeney. That was kind of the core of that team that I really enjoyed. However, outside of that, football was not super easy for me to enjoy it because typically my exposure for it in my household was like older cousins. I have like five or six cousins that are all like 5 to 10 years older than me, and we would always do like Madden tournaments, and I would get absolutely obliterated because I'm like a small child and they're all like teenagers, and I'm like, man, this sucks. So I didn't really care about football that much until middle school when I was not a Colts fan at this point, but middle school, I feel like I was started a Giants fandom, which was super random because the Giants prevented the Patriots from going undefeated. They beat them in the Super Bowl that season. The David Tyree helmet catch. There's a lot of crazy plays from that. Crazy Super Bowl all around. And at the time, as a middle schooler, I feel like a lot of people, even here in Texas, there's a lot of like Patriots random fandom because they're good, and they're dynastic, and that's just what happens. You've seen it in many sports throughout time, but the team that's really good, you get fans kind of all over the country. Like I feel like nowadays, that's kind of a lot of kids with Chiefs. Like you have a lot of random kids that are Chiefs fans because the Chiefs have been so good for the last 5 to 10 years. So that's how it was for the Patriots when I was a kid. And I didn't like the Patriots because of that. Because I was like, oh, all the people I don't like at school like the Patriots. So I like the Giants now because they beat them. Super random reason. And then I feel like that continued up until like college, basically. Then I kind of fell off with sports in general, not even just football. I do remember specifically Dom and I watching Super Bowl 50, which was Broncos Panthers. And I was really rooting for Cam Newton to win a Super Bowl, which didn't really matter. Um, Aside from that, there's kind of a gap there. And then I remember, when I wanted to get back into the sport after college, my mom is from Detroit. And growing up, I would always watch like the Lions on Thanksgiving with her. And she's not like a huge football fan, but she liked it enough that I kind of had exposure in that way. And I was like, you know what? Getting back into football, I'm going to be a Lions fan because my mom's from Detroit. I'll kind of support her. That feels fine. And this was, by the way, this was like 4, 5 years ago when the Lions were like started the season 1-7. So it's not like they were the team they are now, with these kind of high playoff aspirations. I didn't jump on. I jumped on like a year or two before they became good. So that's nice. But it wasn't bandwagony. And now here I am, and I would say that I'm rocking the Amon Ra shirt, the Sun God shirt that I really like. But I like our current team a lot. I think we have high aspirations. I'm sure we will spend time at length talking about this in the future when we're talking about, how we think next season's going to play out or however. Last thing I'll mention here, because I feel like I've been talking for too long already. My grandma from St. Louis really loved the Rams growing up. So I do have a little small part of my heart for the Rams, specifically like Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk, that kind of era of Rams when they were still in St. Louis, because my grandma is like a huge St. Louis sports fan. Um, so there's like little bits and pieces here and there. Overall, I would say kind of like basketball, I do have a team that I really like, which is the Lions. But mostly a neutral fan. I just have an appreciation for the game. Like when the Commanders beat us in the playoffs, I was obviously sad the Lions lost, but I'm not like I don't hate the Commanders now. I still, love Jaden Daniels and what he did last season. So I just appreciate everything. And I feel like I've talked for way too long. Do you have any questions about my story, or do you want to take it over now?
What well I do want to issue the correction. That was Super Bowl 44.
That's three
Um
Super Bowls off.
Colts and Saints. I don't blame you for not remembering. I just Googled it while you were telling us your story because I figured I may as well. What year was Falk and Torrey Holt? Was that like mid two
That
thousands or
that was pretty early, I think, like early thousands.
because
That was
my
young as well.
that wasn't greatest show on turf. I didn't think, but maybe it was. With old Kurt Warner. Anyway,
I think Kurt
uh,
Warner was a part of that team as
then
well, but I
then
didn't
probably
really,
was
but I didn't really care about Kurt Warner.
yeah. You didn't go see the
I didn't see American Underdog.
yeah, I was like, what is with Zach L names this podcast? But Zachary Levi as Kurt Warner didn't get you in theaters. I see. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I think your story makes a lot of sense. I feel like the Giants are another team that, being like a big market team, has influence outside of its home market. So, I also have a hatred. Like my hatred for the Cowboys is pretty well documented. And I feel
Hmm.
like the Cowboys are kind of like the evergreen Patriots and Chiefs, who are sort of, no matter how well they're doing, people won't stop repping them. So I
That was
respect,
definitely a part of my childhood too, was just hating Cowboys because people that I didn't like liked Cowboys as well.
yeah. And I feel like, being from Houston, I imagine there's a little bit of that like Texas rivalry too.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I know. I think it's cool that you got in on the Lions. It's good that you got in a little bit before they were good, so I don't have to accuse you of fair weather fandom.
It's fair.
Um,
It'd be a fair accusation.
yeah, no, that like, so based on that timeline, it was like 2020 ish that you were into the product. Was that like the end of the
Yeah.
Matt Patricia era then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Oh,
sounds right.
that is the most miserable time to be a Lions fan, maybe in my lifetime. Besides, I guess you could look at like the 0-16 team is brutal, but Matt Patricia was just a very negative presence.
Hmm.
So I'll dive into mine. I'll dive into my story real quick. I got a lot of anecdotes, but I'll save them. My maternal grandfather, he would always talk about how he, growing up, used to work as like an usher at the Lions Stadium back in the 50s when they were consistent NFL champions, which is sort of like a forgotten piece of
Mm,
lore because we're all Super Bowl focused now. But the Lions and
right.
Browns were the dominant teams of the 50s, which is sort of forgotten history. And he
Yeah.
worked at the stadium and ended up meeting a lot of players. His neighbor was the scoreboard operator at the stadium, so he ended up meeting a lot of players and has a lot of he had a lot of good stories from that time. But it was definitely my dad who made me mostly a fan, I think. And I loved sharing it with my grandfather too, but my dad would watch all the time. I didn't really care in my early childhood. I wasn't a huge sports person. I think Jared DeVries was on our team and we had the same name, and that was exciting for me. I knew about Jared Allen because he had my name as well.
Hmm.
And it was maybe I want to say it was somewhere around, maybe it was 2011, 2012, 2013, a couple years into the Stafford era, that I started to become a fan. And then the game I sort of remember being a defining moment was Matthew Stafford against the Cowboys with Calvin and everything. And we were driving, and then Stafford threw a pick with a few minutes left in the fourth quarter, and my dad turned it off. I was like, oh, who cares? But I had the NFL.com app, and so I was tracking the game as it was going on, and then I saw that Stafford completed a pass to Calvin Johnson at the 2 yard line. I was like, Dad, we got to turn this thing back on. We got to see what's going to happen. And then it was the famous Riley fake spike where Stafford motions like he's going to spike, leaps over the Cowboys defensive line and scores the game winning touchdown at the very end of the game. And it was such a like, I didn't give up hope and I was rewarded for having hope about the team, that just got me like
Uh-huh.
so excited as a fan. And so from then on, I followed them pretty consistently. I would watch a good number of the games, or at least follow the scores. I would like watch, especially when I was with my dad. In college, I was a little in and out because the Matt Patricia era was really tough. First year of Dan Campbell was really tough. When I was a senior in college, I was kind of checking in, checking out. But I obviously started watching the 2022 season and stuck with it. Really tough start, and then that's when the kind of big turnaround happened. So I've been around for the bad and the good. Checked out a little bit, and then we turned it around. Fully in. Been fortunate enough to go to a number of games. I'll be going to the Monday night game in Detroit against Tampa Bay this year, so very excited for that. But it's family affair. My dad and I text about it, talk about it all the time. Every time we call, we have like our 15-minute obligatory Lions conversation. And we also almost every year since I got into football would watch the NFL draft together. We didn't this most recent year because he visited a little later, um, like in May, I think. And one year in college, I was like, I'm going to watch with my friends. And I kind of regret it in hindsight. But that's okay.
Mm.
Overall, a lot of love for the Lions. And yeah, really excited for this year. I was heartbroken about the Commanders, but I also think Jaden Daniels is going to be a really good player for a long time, and I'm excited that he's in the NFL, so I can show him some grace for that. Any questions about my rich and narrative tapestry there, or
Yeah, I have two that come to mind. Really, I have three that come to mind, and you can tackle them in whichever order you'd like. My first question is your dad bringing me to the game in Tampa this year, or at Tampa, in Detroit with Tampa, whatever? Um, my second question, or not a question, more of a statement. I think it's important that you tell the story of the conference championship game against the 49ers that you were present for. And my third one is, as you know, since I am more recently in the Lions fandom and all that, are there other moments like the one you mentioned of Stafford leaning over the Cowboys D line that growing up like kind of stick in your mind when you think of kind of your Lions fandom, even if they're just like random moments or random players? Because I feel like for me, with a lot of sports and teams that I've liked in my life, it's not always like the thing. Like the thing is very cool, but there's also like random. Like I can mention the name Rafer Alston for the Rockets, and like no one knows who that is, but it's just like a random guy that played that I kind of remember. Um, what are those things for you?
yeah, okay. So I can tackle an order. I'll make sure that he downloads an episode of the podcast on Spotify so that you can be there with us in spirit at the Monday Night Football game. uh, for that question. For the conference championship against the Niners, I was there. I was very fortunate, very 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 lucky, very thankful. My mom's husband, who it's just weird to call stepdad because he just
Sure.
hasn't been that in my life, and like they got
Yeah,
married,
yeah, yeah.
I guess last year, so it's just like a weird
Sure,
phrase
sure,
for me.
sure.
But he had a connection with a company in San Francisco and some folks who worked at that company, and they had box seats at Levi Stadium, and so through them, they were able to get me to that game, and that was that was really cool. We went. My mom brought so my grandfather, who I mentioned, her dad. Um, his health had really been declining, um and so he wasn't going to be able to go, but we knew how much it would mean to him, and how much it sort of meant. So she had like a cardboard cutout of him made that we brought to the game with us, and we got some pictures with the cutout that looked pretty convincing, honestly, and that was cool. But someone up in the box was like, hey, you want to go down to the field? And we were like, that's crazy. So we ended up on the sideline, and that was before the game, kind of able to see the players warm up close, which was really cool. And you're obviously trying to get the attention of all the players as they're like coming in and out of the tunnel, whatever. And the one person whose attention I got, linebackers coach at the time, gave me a fist bump. Now defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard. That was very exciting. And the game itself was brutally difficult. I was really hopeful, and then I just kind of felt I kind of went numb midway through the third quarter as I watched what was happening happen. And
Right.
it's sad, it's emotional, it's tough. My mom isn't as big of a football fan, but she got invested in part for her dad and in part for that moment. And so it hurt a lot, but it was really special to be able to go and experience it. And I got to go to a game last year as well, and we thrashed the Cowboys. Aiden Hutchinson injury was tough, but yeah, I've had a lot of cool experiences in my life. That's definitely one of the top ones. Um, I'll have to tell my Panay Sewell story. It's not really a story, but I've got a cool artifact from that experience at some point. I got to save some of the narratives for later, I guess. In
Sure.
terms of random moments, I remember being in like math class in high school and seeing that like a linebacker on our team, DeAndre Levy, had like I think been released or sort of like left the face of the earth in regards to our team, and that was a little strange. There was an undrafted free agent, Jerome Copeland III, and his nickname was the Osprey because he had such a long like wingspan. And
That's crazy.
it's so random. And he was just like this random dude, but I wanted him to make the team so desperately. And then he
Yeah.
made the team. Like he made the 53. And I kept telling my dad
Yeah.
about it. And he was like, you gotta stop talking about him, man. We know. Like we know he made the team. Whatever. I was a big Ziggy Ansah fan, Ezekiel Ansah. He was
Yeah.
defensive end.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think 2014 draft. I was looking at that recently. He was my first jersey. Um, I there's a lot of like high school fantasy football teams like drafting Adrian Peterson and then him getting injured and like, immediately, right? Like
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. But I think the nice thing about there is one other that I will mention. Because if you haven't seen these moments live, like I don't know if you've seen the Stafford leaping over the Cowboys
Yeah,
line
I have. I
play.
have.
Have you seen his like dislocated shoulder play against the Browns? Is that a clip you've ever seen?
Oh, maybe it like nothing comes to mind immediately.
He it was I had a history teacher who at my NHS induction, and I lived in Tennessee for most of my childhood, told this story to our like NHS induction class about a Detroit Lions quarterback in Tennessee. So very strange choice, but it was so cool for me sitting there. I was like, oh yeah, I love this story. And it wasn't a moment I watched live, but it was one that like in the Stafford lore became kind of big. I think it was
Right.
his rookie season. They're playing the Browns. It's like the second to last play of the game. He gets him down to the red zone, like within 2 yards of the goal line, and like dislocates his shoulder. So he has to come out of the game. And so the backup comes in, and then I think they call a timeout. They finagle for Stafford to come back on the field for the last play of the game. He throws a touchdown to Calvin Johnson to win the game with his like dislocated shoulder, and he's just like grabbing his shoulder in pain. But that was such a cool like moment in his lore. There's those like NFL top tens that they do on like NFL Network, and he
Sure.
was their number one mic'd up player. And all the talking heads were like, "Really, Matthew Stafford, the number one mic'd up player in the league ever? That's so dumb." And I was like, "No, he's awesome, and all of his moments are excellent."
Yeah, we
And
got a lot of respect for Stafford here, of course.
yes, I mean I do remember like Stafford getting traded for Goff,
Hmm.
thinking, "Man, Jared Goff, really?" And
Oh
eating
yeah.
my words every day since pretty much. But yeah, it's been a great team to be a fan of because you are so bonded over how it hurts and you're so grateful for the success.
Hmm.
And honestly, like after certain coaches and regimes, just appreciative to have good people in the building too.
Hmm.
So I don't want to continue to wax poetic because I know I've just been yapping about the Lions forever, and this is an NFL podcast, but that's my love letter. And there's a lot of great other stories I can share at some point. I wear glasses in part because of the Lions, but that's its own thing.
Well, we'll get to him eventually, I'm
We'll get
sure.
to eventually. We're planting
Yeah.
the seeds so that are
Yeah.
now
You're
subscribed.
you're gonna come back.
Yeah, you got to come back. You've already subscribed, liked, and commented. Now comment again. Man, I can't wait for that story. And then listen to every episode following this one.
Hoping that it's there. Hoping that is this the one where the story is told.
Yeah, the story. Again, a lot of my stories are I was at a place and a thing occurred.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and and that is what happened. I do want to briefly let's take a bit of a league wide view. You already mentioned the Panthers Broncos Super Bowl, the Colts Saints Super Bowl. I remember that onside kick. I feel like is one of the most infamous Super Bowl plays ever. What are some moments or players, or maybe there were seasons or whatever? What were some big NFL moments that you feel like are part of your fandom even to this day?
Yeah, I'll kind of work backwards a little bit. I've talked about, I think, the most recent stuff, but I also remember being from the Houston area. I went to the last live football game I was at was Deshaun Watson on the Browns coming back to Houston. I
Wow.
was at that game, and that I think that's the loudest boo I have ever heard in my entire life, an entire football stadium chanting boo. Obviously, if you're familiar with the Deshaun Watson situation, you probably know why, and he deserves
Immensely,
those boos.
immensely deserved. Yeah, I was gonna say a
Yeah.
terrible,
And
terrible person, start to finish.
yeah, so that was, like yeah, I'm not a Texans fan obviously, but like that was cool to be there and be a part of because I was like I understand why these people feel this way. I speaking of terrible people, while I'm there, I went to a game when I was a child. It was Michael Vick and the Falcons versus the Saints. I saw in Atlanta because a family friend at the time lived in Atlanta. I don't remember a ton about that game. I do remember that I was sitting basically on the 50-yard line in the lower level. Child me did not appreciate that, but those are fabulous seats,
That
obviously.
is a great place to sit and watch the game. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really cool, and I remember the game itself being pretty cool. And the thing, with I think a football stadium, comparing it back to my basketball fandom, just the amount of people, and how loud it can get is just astronomically more. Obviously, because basketball stadiums are smaller, a little more echoey, sure, but like you can hear it all around. Like you can kind of pinpoint, where the sections the noises are coming from and stuff like that, which is really neat, I think. I remember watching the 28-3 Patriots Super Bowl comeback at a Chili's in college, with a couple friends, Dom included, I believe. And that was a disaster that I hated to watch.
Yep.
And
That was tough. That was tough.
that
I think
that
I was in
was yeah.
college too, actually, for that game. Was that 2018?
I
2019?
think so. I think I was a
Yeah.
senior in college. Yeah, I think that was 2018. Um, Brutal. Just a brutal watch.
Yep.
Didn't love that. And then,
I the 28 to
go ahead.
3 meme game is very quality though, I will say. A lot of the like Saints trolling the Falcons in the 28
Hmm.
to 3 does
There
make me
was
chuckle a little bit.
a lot of like, oh,
Oh,
you're never gonna live that one down, huh? That's
no, it's that's a
that's tough.
forever. Yeah.
Random players I can think of. I have an affinity because I had that family friend that lived in Atlanta. I have an affinity for D'Angelo Hall, who was a Falcons cornerback, and then I think he was Washington cornerback as well,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a kick returner, which is like cool. I have a thing for kick returners. Kind of as a child, I thought it was kind of a cool niche ability. The Steelers, Antoine Randall is another that comes to mind. Receiver, kick returner over there, just like
Lions
random guys
coaching
that.
legend. Yeah.
Was he really? I
He was
don't think I knew
oh, did you
that.
not know this? So he actually up until this offseason was our wide receivers coach and is now the assistant head coach at Chicago with Ben Johnson. So
That's huge. Didn't know that.
there you
I
go.
don't know a lot about, especially assistant coaches. Assistant coaches is or like position specific coaches. No clue. I couldn't name a single one probably. Too many coaches. Way too many people to remember.
There are a lot of coaches. I don't blame you there. I think what helped was so many of them these last few years have been former players that like it gave
Hmm.
you something else to attach to them. I would
I
have a
did have
much
an
harder time now, but yeah.
I did have an attachment to Aaron Glenn because I actually had an Aaron Glenn jersey as a child because he was a Texans corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when he became a Lions guy, I was like, I know who that is. That's cool. I remember having a oh, this is a story I can tell. When I was a kid, my great uncle, who has now passed away, was a good guy. He brought me. He was a big Texans fan. He brought me to the draft. Not to the draft. I shouldn't say that. To at the time, Reliant Stadium is where they played in Houston. Now NRG, I think. And they did like a draft presentation where like you could go to the stadium and they had like a draft event. The draft was not there, but like fans could
Yeah.
go and sit
The
and watch
watch
and
party. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I believe it was the Mario Williams draft, and
Wow. That's a deep
that was
cut.
pretty like cool to kind of look back on. I didn't really think about it at the time because I was pretty young. He also got me, I think, a Brian Cushing jersey, who was very famous Texans linebacker. Looking back on it, probably a terrible dude. Like, probably could kill people and be okay with it. One of those linebackers who's just like super vicious and fierce and like a little scary, a little unhinged.
I mean, I was going to list Ray Lewis as a player who
Right.
like sticks out in my memory. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think like other super like notable kind of random names that come to mind. But I think that's pretty much it. I feel like I named all the other ones during my spiel earlier. Obviously, you mentioned Calvin Johnson, great name. Andre Johnson, Texans receiver, had a lot of affinity for him growing up too, just because people liked him, and he was like the guy in Houston for so long when the team was not very good. Um, Giants wise, when I was a Giants fan, Michael Strahan, obviously legend. Um, I liked Victor Cruz a lot. He would do the salsa. That was his touchdown celebration, which was cool.
mhm.
And then just like random players here and there that I feel like I would like for a year or two. And that's the thing with football is people, a lot of the times they just bounce around. So like random defensive player X is on this team for 2 years, and then they're on that team, and then they're on that team, and they're on that team, and this is kind of how it goes. But what about you? Do you have any outside of your Lions fandom? Do you have other players that stick out to you, or um, whether it's good or bad teams, anything that you're like, yeah, I remember liking this or hating this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because you know, I think that oh my gosh, I had a brilliantly well developed thought and it's on the way, so don't click off, but I totally lost it. I don't know. There it is. A lot of my football fandom and a lot of my love of football sort of resides between. I'm not a stat head. I don't. You're not going to get a ton of like DVOA analysis here on this podcast. So if,
Right.
if you are looking for that, still listen to our podcast in full, then seek another product to supplement our own.
Uh,
And I I gotta keep promoting. I gotta
yeah,
plug.
yeah,
But no, I think that there's part of me that kind of loves the history and the sort of random tidbits where like, do you know who Peyton Hillis is?
yeah. He was a Browns
Madden
running
cover?
back that was on the cover of Madden.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the reason you know him is because he was on the cover of Madden. I
yeah.
don't think you can
I wouldn't
name
know him otherwise. Yeah,
right. Yeah, yeah. There's no, but there's kind of a love and affinity for that. I've always liked the Ravens. I don't love how they handle some of their off the field stuff. Looking
always
at
seems to have some off the field stuff over there in Baltimore,
it's what
specifically with individuals named Ray. There's
which
two of them.
what are you referencing? I don't know the other one.
Ray Rice.
Well, I know Ray Rice, but you said teams in Baltimore. Are you talking
No,
about?
no. I said teams in Baltimore handling players named Ray.
Yeah, is there another team that had another
No, I just
player
meant Ray
named?
Lewis and Ray
Oh,
Rice. I just
sorry.
meant
Yes.
double Ray.
Did Ray Lewis do something? But that's a conversation for another time, I
Ray
guess. But
Lewis he's like accused of murder or something, right? That's like a thing.
I
You
you
don't
should
know
maybe.
this?
I don't. Wait, what are you talking about?
This is I'm gonna look it up. You talk.
Yeah, you look this up. I'll keep spewing and correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, besides the off field stuff, I've always kind of liked the Ravens look, and those kinds of things. Um, the way they play, I generally like tough defense. I did grow up in Tennessee, right? So I had more of an awareness of, I remember Marcus Mariota getting drafted. Was never like a crazy huge fan of his, but there was this playoffs. I think they beat the Chiefs in the late 20 teens, and like Mariota threw a pass and it bounced off of someone, and then he caught it and scored a touchdown, catching his own pass. Like that was a pretty cool play. Derrick Henry, I have a ton of respect for. Um, Again, my mom's husband is a huge Titans fan, so like he loved AJ Brown. The trade of AJ Brown was a little tough, and I always think about the Jaguars almost Super Bowl season where they were leading the Patriots heading into the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship game and then lost and completely fell apart. It's such a fascinating what if season,
Hmm.
um, with like Blake Bortles helming a an almost Super Bowl team was pretty unbelievable. So
Yeah.
that's a really fun story.
Jalen
Uh,
Ramsey, like
Jalen
really young
Ramsey,
Jalen Ramsey.
yeah, I think that beyond that, players who there are a lot of players, especially when you're a fan of a really bad team, there is this desperation towards if we trade for player X or sign free agent Y, our team will get better, and you like attach yourself to certain names. And I can't remember specifics now, but there's always, earlier in my fandom, there'd always be like, oh, if we can just get this person, our team will be so much better, XYZ. Um, and that never really came to pass. But I remember the Peyton Manning Broncos Super Bowl, not against the Panthers, but against the Seahawks, where Manny Ramirez was the center, and the first play was a botch snap for a safety, and then the Seahawks just eviscerated the
Yeah,
Broncos.
like 43-8 or something.
It
Just
was it was
diabolical
just
Super Bowl.
it was truly like a destruction. And I was listening to another podcast, Bill Barnwell's podcast, and he was talking about the Seahawks were like the team of the 2010s, I think, and they
Hmm.
do stick out in my mind. I think Richard Sherman was on like Madden 16 or something, and that was the Madden
Yes, yes, he was.
that
Yeah.
was the like Dorito fingers Madden that I like poured my soul into, I think. So big
I have
fan
a
of
I
that.
have an affinity for Cam Chancellor a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Legion of Boom was a really fun team to root for because defense is so rarely celebrated now. I think I'll give a shout out to JJ Watt too. I feel like he's one of those guys that was such a part of the conversation for so long around football, and I think people who get into fandom now, like kids who are becoming teenagers and start to get into it, might miss that name because he wasn't playing when they started watching. But JJ Watt was like a menace for 3 or 4
Yeah.
years. He was kind of the defensive player of the league, and that was pretty cool. So those are the names that come to mind for me, I think.
And
Uh,
and you know what? There's so many more probably for both of us.
yeah,
I feel like that's the difference with football and basketball, which sorry, I will tie it to basketball because I have a
please.
basketball show too. Basketball, there's five guys in the court for a team at a time. Football, there's 11, 22-man game. That's where the name comes from, obviously. Um, and also so many different positions. Basketball, there's a maximum of five. Football, there's 15 at least, right? And there's theoretically there's 22, but like you kind of group D line, O line, linebackers, secondary. They kind of blend and blah blah blah. But I feel like that there's so many just more people, 53 people on a roster compared to 15 in basketball, eight of which are relevant. So it's easy for me to think of those players for that, but for this, it's like there's so many people in the history of the time that I've watched this that I'm sure as we progress through the podcast and do more and more episodes, we'll just think of like, oh yeah, that guy. So th those are the top of mind ones, but we'll have more.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of fun to kind of do this trip down memory lane. And the more we talk, the more I'm like, wait, there's 8 more Lions memories I have to share, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
right,
And I'm like,
right.
I just I gotta remember we've been doing
And
this
our
for a
first episode
while.
was
And
3 hours and 46 minutes long.
yeah, seriously. No, I think it's really fun to one of the things I'm really excited about doing this is just kind of both enjoying the league more now, but also taking that trip down memory lane. What did I think about players who are now really good, right? Like, you know, who are those players that I'm forgetting about in this moment, but now I'm thinking about like the Mitch Trubisky trade and like, I'm thinking about Josh Rosen getting taken and then immediately getting replaced by Kyler Murray the next year. I mean, there's just so many topics that as we go through the course of a season and off seasons, they're going to come up naturally, and we'll make great content for future off seasons. But we're rolling into the season now, so unless there's more you want to talk about there, I think we should share our takes on the best and worst offseason moves of the 2025 offseason.
Yeah, real quick clarification on Ray Lewis.
Please. I did need that. I almost forgot.
Yeah,
Yes.
January 2000 Super Bowl party. Um, Ray Lewis and friends. There was a fight. Two men were stabbed to death. During the investigation, blood from one of the victims was found in Ray Lewis's limousine. Lewis was charged with homicide. He eventually testified against his own friends during the trial. So the charges against him were dropped, and he got 12 months probation instead due to him testifying against other people. And he also pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice.
Well, I couldn't remember if there was something about Ray Lewis, but I was like, I don't know. I'm always worried when it's like, yeah, okay, I rescind my
So
love
there's a
for Ray
thing.
Lewis specifically. Yeah, that's substantive. I mean,
It, it the white suit he was wearing has never been found. That also is in this article I'm looking at, and he doesn't
that's
obviously talk about it when people ask him. So
yeah, that's fair. I think that yeah, I don't know. There was something in the back of my I didn't think he had done that. I you never know. I mean, it seems like unfortunately there are a lot of stories of those kinds of investigations just sort of being swept under the rug kind of league wide.
hmm
And it's a conversation I do hope to have
we will
someday about
definitely have it.
yeah.
We will
No,
have it.
I want to talk about that kind of thing like
Not in
the
episode one, but we will have it eventually
yeah, the
because
Rooney
this is
rule is
ethical
another
ball.
thing. Oh yeah, this is ethical ball. The Rooney rule, you know, any sort of like criminal investigations there. There was a report that just came out about how the NFL and NFLPA were like colluding to hide the fact that owners were instructed by the league to maybe not give fully guaranteed contracts like the one they gave to Sean Watson. There's like so many stories that hopefully eventually we have time to explore.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, but um, let's put a pin in that, and let's turn our focus to uh, football moves and this offseason specifically looking at. I looked at the draft, free agency trades. I assume you had sort of the same scope, and we each created a list of our five least favorite transactions by teams. So I
hmm
figure we'll start with the favorites, and I know you ranked them, so we can kind of do a loose like 5-1,
Yeah,
share a little commentary, rock and roll. Let's do it.
sure. Yeah, thank you for listening to us ramble about our football passions and how we got to this point. Hopefully, it wasn't too all over the place and enjoyable. Do you want me to start number five, my fifth
Yeah,
favorite?
let's do it.
Okay. I will say for my process, I looked at, as you said, at free agency moves, at trades, at the draft. I looked at the draft last, and I looked through the first three rounds of the draft and looked at every player that was picked and every team that selected them. And there was no thing that I was like, this is egregious or this is terrible. So I got no draft moves make it on my list. Because
I've got a couple, so I'll cover you.
I I don't know. Like I'm not even saying that I was wrong for doing it. Like I just feel like so many of the moves, it's really tough to tell, I think, in the NFL, and this can be a conversation for later that we dive into further. A lot of the good players are coming from the Alabamas, Georgias, Ohio States of the world, where everyone there is a freaking rock star, so they look awesome. But getting drafted high to a team that's maybe not so good, I think the way they translate into the league doesn't always pan out. I think there are plenty of top blank draft picks that don't do too well. I think there are plenty of late draft picks that do fine. I think it really depends on opportunity and how you translate your game to the NFL. So that being said, I left the draft off because I just don't know. I can't honestly say like this player was drafted too high, this player was drafted too low because I feel like it's hard to tell with football.
Oh, totally fair. Totally fair. I only included draft moves that were trades that I felt like reflected, I won't spoil anything, but either a
I
good or
That's
bad
fair.
example of trade value. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I do have some that include picks that were traded.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. But
I
no,
just
I
didn't have like
agree.
this team drafted this player. That was way too high. Like that didn't make my list.
Yeah, I had a move that I was like, oh, I really thought that tight end was going to go earlier, so this is a great steal for this team. And then I was like, I know nothing
The
about
Colts taking
evaluating tight
Tyler
end.
Warren
Yeah, the
at
Colts
14.
taking Tyler
Yeah.
Warren. I was like, wow, what a
I
steal. And I was like,
It's
I
funny
don't
you say that
know.
because I considered the Bears taking Colson Loveson as a bad move because you know
Yeah,
multitude of reasons. But anyways, that's far and few between. Uh, okay, favorite number five, my fifth favorite, my least favorite of my favorites. The Commanders acquiring Debo Samuel for pick 147. Um, and they got a side move. They got Laramie Tunsil in pick 28 for pick 79 and 236 from the Texans. I like this combination of moves because I think both players a little past their prime, obviously. You get the Debo washed thing, I feel like is a big thing in football narrative right now. But this is a team that did just make the conference championship. They have a young quarterback who's already very good. And I think the amount they gave up to get these two veteran players in is not egregious. And it gives them just a little something. And I feel like all they need, or maybe all they think they need, is a little something to kind of, make a further push in the NFC playoff picture next year. So I respect them for making that push.
Yeah, I think those moves definitely were on my radar. I'm not as big of a fan of them pushing the chips in just because I think we saw with like CJ Stroud and the Texans, you can think that you're close and then not be as close as you think, and suddenly your
Right.
team's built a little differently. But I think in the case of getting a good left tackle like Laramie Tunsil, it's just rarely a mistake to have a good tackle.
Right.
And a fifth for Debo to me wasn't so much of an investment that I was like, oh man, they're really mortgaging the future. That fifth round pick was going to be something. So yeah, I
Sure.
think to your point, they haven't given up their ability to build a complete
Yeah.
roster to make those moves. And yeah, I think the upshot is, maybe they're more competitive in the NFC Championship game, right? And Jaden Daniels looks like an absolute dog. So I definitely respect that pick. I think those moves were solid.
Yeah, if it was like a second round pick for Debo, I'd have been like, oh, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's
But
thick.
fifth round pick, whatever. What do you got for me?
So I didn't go team by team so much as I scoured like the biggest contract moves because I was looking for like, okay, what were the biggest signings? And this one I wasn't expecting to land on. It's just a feeling I have about this player. My number
Yeah.
five is Justin Fields. The Jets signing Justin Fields for 2 years, 40 million.
Okay.
Um, and I'm not going to pretend I know a ton about Justin Fields' game, but he was in the division for a number of years, and his mobility tormented us. I think that's probably part of why Aaron Glenn was like, "Please bring on board this menace who tortured my Lions." But I feel like Justin Fields is at an age that reminds me a little bit of we've talked about like the Baker Mayfield Renaissance, in the national conversation. People have talked about Jared Goff. People have talked about Sam Darnold. And I don't think Justin Fields was really playing his way out of a job when he got replaced by Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. And so, if the Colts are going to sign Daniel Jones for 1 year, 14 million, and the Giants released Daniel Jones midseason because they were
Right.
putting him in as like a scout team safety and like the fourth string,
Hmm.
you're going to spend, okay, 6 million more and it's a 2 year commitment, but you might get something out of Justin Fields, who's shown more potential than a lot of other bridge quarterbacks. Um, you're paying less than a move that I'm less optimistic about that might come up later. So yeah, that just I feel like Justin Fields might give the Jets more than they're paying for, and if they're not, it's not so huge an investment that they're going to be crying about it for years to come.
Number two on my list, Justin Field to the Jets.
Let's go,
Um,
let's go.
So we are in agreement there. Yeah, I loved this move. I thought it was a great move. The Jets, I mean, their best player, offensive player at least, is obviously Garrett Wilson. They just signed him to a huge extension, get a quarterback that's more on his timeline than 67-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who just couldn't stay healthy for them. Um, and I think, the thing with Justin Fields that he's kind of been on already, multiple teams. I really think the only reason he isn't on the Bears anymore is because they landed the number one overall pick in a very quarterback heavy draft. And I guess, I don't know if they tried to trade it back and just couldn't find any suitors. And they said, well, we got to take the guy at number one. So we got to get rid of our current guy. And then, like you mentioned with the Steelers, I think the situation there, from my understanding, Russell Wilson was kind of promised the starter position as the more veteran player. Justin Fields had a good start, I think, with the Steelers last year. And then Russell Wilson was healthy, and I said, "Well, we promised that he would start, so I guess we have to, uphold our end of that deal." And then Justin Fields just kind of fell to the wayside. But I think I can't act like his time in Chicago when he's spent most of his career. He was surrounded by immense talent and support. I feel like
Yeah,
he barely had an
definitely not.
offensive line half the time. So,
Yep.
I think there's a player there's a lot of potential that is yet to be yielded in the NFL. And I'm excited to see what he can do with the Jets. And I think it'll breathe kind of a breath of fresh air over there. So that's why I had it on my list all the way up at number two.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Caleb Williams was so touted that it would have been perceived as pretty shocking to pass on a player who definitely hadn't established himself as like a top 15 quarterback, right?
Hmm.
I think if Justin Fields was playing at the level that, like, say, Sam Darnold played last year, maybe you're having a very different conversation. But I definitely agree that he's got a ton of potential. If that's your number two, what is your number four?
I feel like you should say number four now because now I have two
Oh,
gone.
now you have two gone. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was looking at coaching hires and I mean, I'll be honest, there were a lot of moves I was skeptical of this offseason and
yeah.
few that I was like, yeah, you got it. So I was looking to put my list together. I'll save this one. I'll save this one because this one segues right into what we're talking about. The Bears trading a fourth round pick for Joe Tooney and a sixth round pick for Jonah Jackson. Joe Tooney being a guard from the Chiefs, Jonah Jackson playing tackle for the Rams, but being a guard.
Yeah.
Um, they extended Jonah Jackson, which I didn't love, but I think you're trading relatively minor assets for relatively proven talent on the offensive line. And yes, you had to give them big contracts, but I think that there is so much value in having an interior offensive line that you don't have to think about, right? I think as a
Right.
fan, you hate having to think about your team's offensive line. It's just like I don't want them on the mind unless they're especially good. Um, Panay Sewell stand up, but
I love
it's
Penei Sewell. I
I
love
love
him.
Panay Sewell so much, and like our offensive line as a whole.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah, for
but
sure.
now, but for example, right, the Lions, Frank Ragnow just retired. Now we're going to be
Hmm.
thinking about center all offseason. This gives some stability to the Bears. This gives Caleb Williams some veteran protectors up front. Jonah Jackson had a rough season with the Rams, but he was a solid guard for the Lions for a number of years. Ben Johnson's going to know how to use him. And when you are, yes, handing out contracts, but not breaking the bank to materially improve your team, especially at positions that maybe aren't the easiest to always get right, but are nice to have right. I just feel like it's a great value proposition, right? If they had sent a second and a third round pick for these players, I would feel differently. But fourth and a sixth, you're getting proven talent that you have a relationship with in the case of Jonah Jackson, and you're giving Caleb Williams a chance. Because like you said, Bears offensive line has been brutal for a number of years. So I just loved the value on that. And I felt like we were just talking about Caleb Williams. So it felt like a nice segue.
Yeah, that was a great segue. I like that pick a lot. Like the offensive line, the representation. I feel like whenever I watched Bears games last season, Caleb Williams was just running for his life. Like,
Yeah. Oh
and
man.
not
Yeah.
only does this fix that problem, but it shows Caleb Williams like, hey, like we want you to succeed. We're gonna make these moves to build around you. Like we want to give you what you need. We're sorry we didn't do that last year, kind of thing. Where immediately coach gone, offensive line fixed. Like they're making the moves they need to make in order to show their young guy like we're gonna try to make it work around you and build around you. So, um, yeah, I think that's a great pick by you.
Okay. Well, that's my four. So what is your number four pick here?
My number four, coming back home to the Lions.
All
A
right.
couple quick pickups. Avante Maddox, I'm not that high on, but watching our secondary last year, please give me anybody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the one I'm more excited about is DJ Reed. I think DJ Reed was very good on the Jets for a number of years across from Sauce Gardner. Do I think he's a prime, top 10 quarterback? No. But I think he has at points in his career been a proven kind of secondary force, and that's I think that kind of veteran presence is what we need because I think a lot of our good secondary players are on the younger side. So even if these guys aren't going to be talent level where we necessarily need them to be, maybe they will enforce, good qualities and stuff in the younger guys that can kind of elevate their game. Because last year we had so many defensive injuries, I just felt like we were kind of, pulling straps towards the end there, and
Oh, no doubt.
this
No
kind of
doubt.
reinforces, this helps a little bit in that regard. Still guys that I think you can plug and play when you need to. So I liked the lines that for me as a fan, that was like the clearest issue of our team last year. And these are just like a couple purposeful moves to address that.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on that in general. One, I agree. I think the DJ Reed Carlton Davis swap worked out pretty well for us. Um, I think Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are two of the best safeties in the
Yeah,
NFL, if not
they're
like
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, Kirby Joseph is now the highest paid safety, and I think he deserves it. And I love them. But yeah, you're right. The quarter position, Terrion Arnold coming along was tough, and then I want to say Carlton Davis like broke his jaw, and so we were just cycling through. It didn't get quite as thin as linebacker, but it was tough. And I like those. I like that call out. I like Avante Maddox as a depth signing as well. A couple other defensive signings I want to call out. Derek Barnes is the jersey that I
Yep.
own. He's a linebacker.
Yeah.
We re-signed him. I didn't know if it was going to
Yeah.
happen. I was really hyped about that. And then the defensive tackle market blew up this year. We got Levi Onwuzurike back for I think 4 or 5 million on a 1 year deal. Pretty disruptive player, huge value signing. So yeah, I think our defensive signings were good in general, and I like that you called out DJ Reed because I didn't want to go too homer, so I didn't like put them on my list. But
Yeah.
I not that you are, but I just for me I was like I know I will just gab about them for 20 minutes if I
Yeah.
put them on the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you called out, especially DJ Reed. I feel really good about bringing in a physical, stylistic fit, and for a little less money than Carlton Davis. I think it's just money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Hit
yeah,
me with your three, four,
yes,
three,
three.
three.
At number three, let's see what I want to put at number three. This one is, I do want to talk about that team a little further. Okay, I forgot I put this one on here. There's a few players. My number three and my number two. Mine weren't really ranked, so I'm more just grouping them
Yeah. Yeah.
by
Yeah.
most interesting, I guess. Are both contracts that are extensions that I like the value of, and Ronnie Stanley is a
Hmm.
tackle. I guess I went a lot of offensive line, but tackle with the Ravens
I
signed
like
a
it.
three or $60 million extension. And as we might look at when we go kind of teaser, we might go team by team with some offseason moves in the coming episodes. But um, the Titans gave a 4 year, $82 million contract to Dan Moore. Can you tell me what team Dan Moore played for before being signed by the Titans?
I sure can't, but I'm pretty sure I could have told you that Ronnie Stanley was a Raven because that's how good he is as a tackle.
Yeah, so Dan Moore played for the Steelers, and like I think I knew that, but Stanley is a pretty well-known tackle on a team that is punishing, running the ball, provides great protection, strong offense. So, he has some injury issues in the past, but I feel like when you get a player like that for 20 million a year, the market's going to keep growing. Just felt like good value to me, especially
Hmm.
compared to that. I saw that top of market deal for a player I was simply less familiar with. And it struck me. And I'm not going to pretend I'm a master of tackle play. I can't give you Dan Moore analysis that's going to blow your mind, but it just struck me that Stanley is one of those offensive tackles that's consistently on my radar. And he signed for a deal that looks like good value for the Ravens going forward as long as he stays healthy. No guarantees, but he did, it appear, play a pretty full slate last year. So, yeah, love me some value signings, and we'll see that at number two as well. What is
Yeah, that's a
your
good cut.
Thank you. What is your? Are you at number three now? Because we did your
I'm
number
at number
two.
three because
Okay,
yeah, we
yeah.
already did my number two. Staying on the same team, the Ravens.
Oh
I have
wow.
I have
Okay.
a combination of what I thought kind of how I mentioned for the Debo and Larry Tunsil thing for the Commanders. A couple veteran guys that I thought were worth bringing in on the deals that they did. 1 year deal for D Hop, DeAndre Hopkins. Yes,
Mhm.
he is washed, not washed, but he's out of his prime, obviously. Um, Jair Alexander, picking him up for nothing, basically, after being released from the Packers, and then Chidobe Awuzie as well in that secondary. I like these deals. I do think basically all three of these players are past their playing prime. But again, like I mentioned for the Commanders, the Ravens are a team that's been on the doorstep for several years. They have constantly faced playoff struggle and not been able to kind of get over the hump. They have very sad playoff eliminations in recent years as well. The Mark Andrews drop, obviously, this past year was very tragic.
Brutal.
Yeah, but I think, in a team where clearly Zay Flowers is your best receiver, after that, you have Rashad Bateman, first round pick, hasn't really played a ton. They did re-sign him, but he hasn't like been this great kind of receiving threat for them. Isaiah likely seems to be coming on. Maybe we'll kind of split that tight end duties with Mark Andrews again. But I feel like they haven't had a consistent second receiver. I don't even think DeAndre Hopkins will be that. But I think when you get to the AFC divisional game and you need to throw a corner end zone pass, that's not a bad bet. A bad even if a decoy. Like teams will fear that player
Yeah.
because of his history. So I think that's a good ad, and I think, like I said, it's like 1 year, 5 million for that. Not a big deal at all. Jair Alexander, I know, has had kind of some locker room problems over in Green Bay. I think he gets kind of big for his britches sometimes, but he has been the leader of that Packers secondary for several years, and I think the only secondary player I can even think about in recent Ravens history is like Marlon Humphrey, who has been pretty good. And then I know they had like Weddle a while ago, and obviously when you get like way back, you can start naming some more players. Um, but I think they needed some more secondary presence. I think him and Uzier will kind of contribute to that. And again, just a team that I think has Super Bowl aspirations, kind of filling in the gaps on some of the weaker parts of their lineup. Because I think when you look elsewhere, it's like, oh yeah, that's like star player, star player, star player. Like they have all these great guys now. They're kind of maybe filling in some of those weaker spots.
Yeah, I especially like the secondary signings. I think that Hopkins, if he plays at a solid level and gives them like 400 meaningful yards, I think that that's great. I have flashbacks to the Odell Beckham like 1 year, 15
Yeah,
million signing that was like not, but at the same time, you just never know. And it's Hopkins, very technical player, worth taking a flyer on that he can still give you something. And if not on the field, he might be the kind of person who coaches up the other players in that room and maybe helps them come along. And then, yeah, secondary to me, especially after the defensive injuries, the lines of experience, just have bodies. If a guy has a
yeah.
bad season, you want to have that guy behind him who can at least spot start while he's figuring it out. Um, Jair's very talented, right? The top end of that's great. Um, and if you don't necessarily need him to start for you, then you can maybe keep him healthy for playoff minutes if a guy goes down in week 16, something like that. And then Awuzie, yeah, just bring in veterans who know how to play quarterback because if they get hurt, you will be so out of luck if you don't have a good backups. And I feel like you can get quality corners, like you said, for relatively solid deals. So yeah, I think it's a great pick. And I think you're definitely you've highlighted a position that definitely values depth. So I think that that's very wise. Very
Yeah,
wise.
you picked some offensive linemen. I picked a lot of secondary players. I'm now realizing. So
Yeah. The only other secondary player for the Ravens that's like, oh, that guy's really good is Kyle Hamilton, but he's also a safety,
yeah,
right?
that's a good call. It's a good call. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a lot of like good safety need corner
Hmm.
situations. So yeah, I think it makes sense to just keep adding that value. I'll jump in here with my number two. I was thinking about Miles Garrett signing for 4 years, 160 million, and I was thinking, great player, but I always respect the teams that sign their players first and
Uh-huh.
get under that. It's kind of unfortunate for players to sort of be the first in and so not get as much money as whoever happens to be next. But I was looking at the Raiders. And there were a few Raiders moves I could have put on here because I liked a lot of their moves in a vacuum. But re-signing Max Crosby, 3 years, 106.5 million. It's like 33, 34 million a year. Um, and maybe 35, but that's 5 million less per year than you're paying Miles Garrett for a player who's in a similar bucket. And if memory serves, is maybe a year younger. So maybe you get a little bit more of the prime out of them. You're not signing as long a deal. So if there's a fall off, you're not liable for that. And I think Max Crosby's a monster. I look at hoping if Aiden Hutchinson can continue being who he was last year before the injury, Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, Will Anderson's played really well. Jared Verse was a rookie for the Rams who's gotten a lot of pop.
Hmm.
And obviously Miles Garrett. But, if you're getting a surefire top five defensive end and you're getting them a little bit under where the market's going to go, especially in the next couple of years, I just feel like that's good business. Even if the Raiders aren't a team that I feel like is super competitive right now.
Yeah.
I think that with a veteran coach bringing in a veteran quarterback, They're going to try to get this thing rolling sooner than later. And I have to assume the fan base just loves Max Crosby. So,
Oh yeah,
um,
he has to be
yeah,
the
just
guy.
oh my gosh, and he loved the Lions too. He's like a huge donor to like Eastern Michigan University, which I think is where he went, and like there's a
Yeah,
whole thing there. It's
random
the what
school.
if. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's my mom's alma mater actually. Anyway, um, but yeah, I just thought that was a nice value signing for a premium player, getting them at the second highest rate in the
hmm
year where he's signing that new contract. I just think that's good business. Getting ahead of that for the Raiders.
Yeah, they call Max Crosby the white Miles Garrett, I think. So, that's
I,
huge.
that yeah, I mean if that's the only change in your yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting.
No, but I agree with the sentiment that pay your guy, your player. When you have a player that is so impactful in your franchise, like you mentioned, obviously they're not winning. And I think, talking heads would have told you over the last couple of years that he wanted out. They were like, he doesn't want to be here, or they should trade him because, they're not very good and they get a lot of assets. And I very specifically remember a locker room interview where he was like, I want to be a Raider. Like, I want to be here for my career.
Yeah.
And then you go and pay him. Great. Like, I love that. And even if the Raiders never become super competitive in his prime as a player, it's like, we as we progress further and further in the sports, we are getting less and less one player from one team for their whole career, and
Mhm.
across all sports, really. Um, but especially in football, I think when oftentimes it's so harsh. You see players that are good NFL players just cut from teams because they're like, we don't actually want to pay you anymore because we're trying to do something else and you don't kind of fit with that vision. So I like when teams don't do that and they award the guy that's been there, put in the work, and made such a huge impact for that team and that culture. So yeah, I like that pick from you.
Uh, all right. That brings us to your best move
My
of
best
the
move.
offseason. Oh, clip this
Um,
for social because I want you held accountable as I will be held accountable for my number
I'm
one.
going to be held accountable, especially because I think the pick I chose is controversial.
Oh,
From what I read into on social media. So we'll see. But yeah, so my number two move was the Justin Fields thing, which you already mentioned, so I brought it up. My number one move this offseason, the move that I thought was the best, the Dolphins acquiring Minka Fitzpatrick
wow.
for Jalen Ramsey and a couple of picks and Jonnu Smith. Don't need to get into the nitty gritty. We'll talk about it later. Um, but the reason I like this move, Jalen Ramsey, for what feels like a long time, I think he's overrated. I don't think
Wow.
he's that great of a corner, and I'm not saying that to be clickbaity and stuff like that. I just don't think like I feel like he had like an amazing first 2 to 3, 4 years with the Jaguars, like burst onto the scene strong, and he was great. I just think he has declined over time, but like
Mhm.
the name is still Jalen Ramsey. That's kind of what I mean. I mean, he's still a great player. Don't get me wrong. I also think Mika Fitzpatrick is a great player. I think he's kind of underrated. When you look at the Steelers, a team that is known for the defensive identity, yes, they have TJ Watt. I'm not. Did he win Defensive Player of the Year? If he didn't, he was up there. And I know he has been up there in recent years. He's been, top three linebacker in the league for several years. There's other great defensive players over there in the Steelers organization. But like you mentioned with Kyle Hamilton earlier for the Ravens, I think having a safety in your back line to kind of cement that secondary and that defense is really important. And I think Mika Fitzpatrick has done a great job of that for the Steelers over the past several years. Obviously, he's made all pro teams, Pro Bowls, blah, blah, blah. And he's a couple years younger than Jalen Ramsey at this point in their career. So I think kind of doing a one for one. They did give up Johnny Smith, which I think is worth mentioning because Johnny Smith is a good tight end. And I like him, but the Dolphins don't really use their tight ends that much. And they have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Like they have passing threats outside of tight end as a position, anyways. So it is a loss, I will say, not a huge loss. They did give up a fifth round pick, and then they received a seventh round pick a couple years down the line. But I really like Minka Fitzpatrick. I think he's an underrated safety. I think him and Jalen Ramsey are both really good players, but I think Jalen Ramsey is kind of a little overrated because kind of a little underrated. He's a little younger. Um, so I like the move for that because it seemed like there was already some discourse with Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins, and that has been not an issue, but a thing in Jalen Ramsey's career these past couple of years. The teams he's on, he gets very vocal and agitated depending on what the situation on that team is, and to trade him for a player that I think is relatively equal caliber is a big win for me.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting pick. I'm not going to come down agreeing with you necessarily, but I think there's aspects of it worth discussing. This trade happened while I was in the Grand Canyon for a week, so I came out of the Grand Canyon. And it was like, oh, this happened. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I will say so. First off, just clerically, I should have remembered this. Defensive Player of the Year this year was actually Pat Surtain. T.J. Watt has
Mm.
one, but that was 2021.
Okay.
Um, but I just was like, I couldn't remember, so I looked it up. I was curious. I think that the Minka Fitzpatrick like Dolphins backstory, correct?
I know he was on the Dolphins his rookie year. I don't know. I don't know what happened after that.
The Steelers traded, I think, two firsts for Minka Fitzpatrick from the
Mm.
Dolphins at some point, which is just kind of like
Huge. Two
interesting.
firsts is a lot.
I want to say it was two. I'll double check that because it's a
Yeah,
big number. But
that's a big deal. I do know.
but
Yeah, I know he was traded after his rookie year. Yeah, I do remember
yeah,
that.
um, but I saw this move, and I of course I'm only gonna. Oh, here we go. 2019 in exchange for a 2020 first round pick, along with for first and fifth in 2020 and a 2021. Okay, so one first, I think. I might have had that wrong, but anyway, either way, I think that Minka Fitzpatrick, pretty good player. Jalen Ramsey, I don't. Again, I can't really say. I know he was a part of like the Rams,
Hmm.
dynasty and those kinds of things. So, um, I think Jonnu Smith, I kind of feel like is being underrated in this trade. I think Jalen
No, I
Ramsey is
like
being
Johnny Smith.
overrated in this trade.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was one of those moves that I was like thinking about. Do I feel like either of these teams got better? Maybe I missed this because I was in my DPOY haze. But like, which team do you think won the trade? Do you think it's
the
Miami,
Dolphins.
the Dolphins?
Yeah,
Okay,
for
yeah,
getting Minka Fitzpatrick. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think Minka is probably the best player in this trade at this point, or at the very least, is like you know on the sticker price, going to be around a Jalen Ramsey level player. So I feel like pairing Jonnu Smith back with Arthur Smith, who was coach of the Falcons and
yeah,
offensive coordinator of the Titans in the Jonnu Smith feasting era, like there's value in that too.
yeah.
Um, I just don't know if the outlook for the Dolphins is like they were one Minka Fitzpatrick minus Jonnu Smith, who was actually a big part of their offense last year for some reason, and
Yeah.
Jalen Ramsey away. But I could eat my words. Minka
No, I
Fitzpatrick
don't.
could
I
have a
don't think they
dominant
are.
season,
I
right?
don't think this just makes them contenders. I just like the boldness of the move, trading a player such as Jalen Ramsey and Johnny Smith, who we will shout out. Um, and yeah, I mean, I said this also, but Minka's a little younger. Um, Jalen's already 30, which in football years is ancient. So,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, yeah, for most positions, 30 is like, oh, yeah,
and I think especially in a secondary position where we see the receivers in the league are so talented and so fast, good luck keeping up as you kind of age out.
yeah. No, it's fair, and I think that we could look back on. I know some talking heads were saying, oh, Minka had a down year last year and could bring it back. I mean, if Minka has a great season, I don't see a world where Jalen Ramsey is an All Pro player again. I could see a
Hmm.
world where Minka Fitzpatrick puts in one more All Pro season, right? Just based on
Right.
age and just the trajectory of. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, I just feel like has been playing forever. Um, so yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think it's bold. It wasn't on my list, but I respect the fact that you are honoring Minka Fitzpatrick, and you could look great with this take in a year if Minka blows up and Jalen
Or
does
I'll
not.
look silly if
Either
it's
way,
the opposite.
I mean, I think that's true for all of us for all these takes, right? I've got
That's
one or two
fair.
in the bad takes that I might eat my words on. Joe Burrow may see to it that I suffer for one of my takes and the bad takes on my own, but we'll get there.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
my number one, much more boring, and again, not really ranked on my end, but I like the Mike Vrabel hire in New
Mm,
England. I don't love when teams hire GMs and coaches at different times unless that GM is like been around for a while and has a proven track record.
hmm
Um, But I look at they did Gerard Mayo a little dirty. They had this
I was
sort of
gonna
like
say that's the part I don't like about it. Is like,
I don't like that.
what did you
It was just
expect him to do with that team?
no, it was a bad team, and I feel like the Elliott Wolf being installed as like kind of the GM. It was just sort of an odd season for Mayo. I know some things came out that were like, oh, maybe he wasn't ready for this. Either way, if we remove the circumstances that created the opening, and I suspect that if Rabel wasn't in this cycle, maybe they wouldn't have gotten rid of Mayo.
Right.
But um, again, growing up in Tennessee, seeing Mike Vrabel's sort of cultural impact on the Titans, which I think are one of those teams that people just forget about, right? When they
Hmm.
aren't relevant, they aren't playing relevant football. They don't have a rich cultural history the way some other teams do, being a relatively new franchise after the move of the
You'll
Oilers.
you'll have to remind me. Is this like Air McNair era? Like I don't.
Mike was when was Mike Vrabel coach of the
Yeah.
Titans?
Yeah.
Um, he
Or is
was
that
he
too
was
old?
that is way too old. He was coach of
Okay.
the Titans 2 years ago. They fired
Okay. I
him.
knew. I thought that was the case. I was like, you said like when you said the Titans, I was like, okay,
Sorry.
like
Yeah, I know. I brought in like the Oilers thing. That was my bad.
yeah, yeah.
Vrabel was the coach before the current coach Brian Callahan. He got kind
Hmm.
of fired, and the
Yeah,
Titans
I remember that situation being a little weird. Yeah.
being a little messy. Yes. So, he was there for the Ryan Tannehill, AJ
Yep.
Brown
Yep.
years, and produced a football team that people were talking about and thinking about again. They were number one seed in the AFC for one of those years.
Very random year.
Very random year, but they were competitive. I mean, they had a strong. He reminds me somewhat of a like culture builder
Hmm.
type that we've seen work in Detroit
I
and
was
in
gonna
some
say
other
this. Is
places as
this
well.
just a Dan Campbell thing? You're just saying he's the next Dan Campbell? Is that what's
I
happening?
don't want to. I'm not saying he's the next Dan Campbell. I think I just respect the fact that they identified a coach. I was just looking at all the coaching hires and said, who do I feel the most confident? Well, unless there's a power struggle, because that was kind of happening in Tennessee. But John
Hmm.
Robinson trading AJ Brown. Sorry, I have a lot of like Titans takes that are like hiding behind my Lions takes, but like John Robinson trading AJ Brown for a first round pick, taking Traylon Burks really was like this flashpoint. What are we doing moment? And
Not looking so
after
good right
that,
now.
yeah, that really fell apart for the Titans. And so if Vrabel is comfortable sort of like driving the ship and doesn't maybe let, any of those sort of tendencies to take the full reins, if he just focuses on being a good culture dude and blends with Elliott Wolf, all that stuff, I could see it being the most secure hire. The other coaching hire that maybe, as I think about it, I would have chosen instead, but I didn't want to do two different things for the same team. I really like the Pete Carroll hire as well for the
Hmm.
Raiders, but I just think that Vrabel has a real chance to bring credibility and relevance back to the Patriots, especially with Drake May. Reading about that draft and how coveted Drake May was, and he played fairly well. I think they could be relevant soon. So yeah, that was my number one. Again, not super rank heavy, but that could change the course of their team for the better if he's the
Hmm.
person that people hope he might be.
It all starts
Oh,
somewhere.
they all start somewhere. Okay.
Somebody has to tell you to bite their kneecaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stole at this point, only one guy can get away with any caps line. But Vrabel and Campbell are definitely like if I had to pay for a UFC fight between two head coaches,
Oh,
um,
that would be awesome.
that'd be a great fight. Um, and yeah, I'm a little Dan Campbell pilled. What can I say?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
True.
shamelessly. Um, okay, let's get into the five worst, and we had you start off for the best moves. So I think I'll start off for the worst moves.
You should.
Um, yeah,
Least favorite, worst just feels mean.
sorry,
But
least favorite.
we can say worst. But
Sorry,
yeah.
worst in my estimation, which is
Yeah.
inherently flawed as a casual observer of the National Football League.
Right.
Moves. Sorry, I'll be more specific. Moves that I have the lowest confidence will produce sustainable positive results for the team involved.
There you go.
Um,
Thank you. That's really good
that
for shorts. That's really good.
yeah,
That
yeah.
exact
Let's
line
let's
right
go and brand that.
there.
Will that fit in the YouTube title?
Yeah.
Um, um, I don't know, moves that make me SMH. I don't know. Is that hip? Uh, uh, okay. Let's start with some draft trades. I'll start with this one first because I don't know enough about the player. There were some character concerns. My honorable mention is I trust Brad Holmes in all things, we traded away two future thirds to get back two future sixth and then move up to take a player at the bottom of the third round. And I was like, that's steep. But an arguably steeper trade for a player that there were some character questions about. The Atlanta Falcons traded up to the 26th pick in the first round to take edge James Pierce Jr. They
Yeah.
also got a third this year, number 101, and they gave away pick 46, a first next year, and a seventh this year. And I just think that giving away a future first to bet on a player in the back of the first round is a huge, huge gamble. I know that position doesn't always matter, right? In the draft, like we've seen steals at the bottom of the draft, we've seen busts at the top of the draft, but a first round pick is such a strong asset. And to decide that one of those gambles that you're taking is worth burning another lottery ticket or trading away a second gambling slip for
Right.
feels risky, even if you have a ton of conviction on that player. And the Falcons didn't make a move for that player earlier. I just now my brain is wondering, did they have a first round pick at all this year that gave them the option? But either way, I found myself shaking my head a little bit at that
SMHing.
particular move. I was as SMHing. I guess that's my brand now. Is I'm SMHing my head, and I just
Shaking my head, my head. That's
shaking
crazy.
my head. It just felt it. Oh, they did have a first round pick already, so they took a different player, and then I guess they were like, we
Did it
can't
take
wait.
Campbell?
They did not
I
take
mean,
Jahad Campbell, if that's who you're thinking of.
no, that's the
Um,
Eagles guy.
yep.
That is who I was thinking of, but I know he went to the Eagles. Did they take like a linebacker, Jalen?
Jalon Walker from Georgia. Yeah.
Jalan.
So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, or Jalen. I don't know.
Who
Jalon.
knows?
Yep.
Who knows?
They took Walker from Georgia, and yeah, another defensive player. I think he might be. Let me see. Yeah, he's listed as a linebacker. So just really strange to me that this was how they opted to move around the board and make such a gamble. But there is another draft trade higher on the list that I will be excited to talk about when we get to it. So I'll pass to you.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting pick. I didn't realize they traded a future first to make that pick. Definitely makes it a lot worse. I know
Yeah.
James Pierce Jr. coming into this college season at Tennessee was like a top five guy. And then
Mhm.
he dropped all the way down there with the character issues that you mentioned, and he didn't have a stellar season either.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, it's a big bet to make. Future first are just it feels like they shouldn't be tradable. So valuable in the NFL. Um, so I definitely understand why that made it on your list. Here's my number five least favorite move. Not because I hate this player. I want to make that clear. The Bengals re-signing T. Higgins to a 4-year, $115 million deal. Why do I think it's a bad move? Because he's your second receiver. That's really the reason is not because T. Higgins is a bad player. He's a great football player. I think on at least 25 NFL teams, he's your receiver number one, right? He's not top of the line, but if you have a Chase, a Jefferson, whatever, he's not going to be the guy, but he has that talent, I think. And that's just a huge number for us. What ultimately is going to be your second best receiver on your team. And you definitely want more receiving assets for your quarterback to throw to, obviously. But if you already have a guy they're paying Jamar Chase a ton already. And then you're going to have this guy, maybe your second receiver makes $50 million less than this receiver makes. Um, so that's kind of the scary thing with that. They're both making a lot of money, both of their receivers and their quarterback too. I know you kind of alluded to earlier, but I just worry that it's going to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of trap them in a way where they can't then pay other players in other positions of need on their team, whether it's offensive or defensive, and then they're kind of stuck in a rut because all of their money is three players on offense who so far have made it to one Super Bowl and one championship game, I think, outside of that. But they're not going to go back there if they can't pay other positions. And they can't pay other positions if they're dedicating this much of their cap to this one position. That's why it's on my list, not because I hate T. Higgins. I just think it's way too much money to give your second best receiver.
The
And he's
take
been
I
injured a lot the last couple seasons, by the way.
he the take I had with the most conviction on either list.
Yeah.
Why on earth did they sign both these guys to huge contracts?
Yeah.
I literally like there was the one move that I was like, oh, I just don't. I get it. I get why someone would make this choice. I just don't see this working for them at all. Thank you for putting this on your list. This was like for me. Oh my goodness. So
This is like
just
your one. It sounds
this is
like.
for me. Yeah. I mean, I would say that
Yeah.
if we were going to rank them kind of
The
loosely, this
combination
would be the
of the
top.
deals, so to
Yeah,
speak.
and it's you got to sign Jamar Chase. You just have to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
so just for the numbers, right? Jamar Chase, 4 years, $161 million. That is Myles Garrett money. That is $40 million per year. T, 4 years, $115 million. So that is almost $70 million for two receivers on your football team.
Yeah.
And I know the Lions have talked about potentially re-signing Jameson Williams. We're already paying him on Raw $30 million. So I'm probably going to have to turn around and defend this kind of spending and
If
like
if Jameson Williams is making $115 million over 4 years, the Lions have messed up.
it would be a lot of money. And I will say, at the very least, then your top two receivers are making $30 million a year each, not 40 and $30 million a year each, which is to me insane. And you said, oh, they might not be able to sign other players. Yeah, the Bengals are notoriously cheap. They're already trying to stiff Trey Hendrickson, right? That's been a
Yeah,
narrative
yeah,
all offseason. They have not re-signed him yet. So that is or extended him yet. So that's a problem. Um, and that's like, its own thing. And then yeah, the Bengals being notoriously cheap have not signed their first round pick yet either, because they're trying
oh
to
yeah,
get him to
he's the
accept
one guy
the one guy. They
yeah.
want him to take some, and maybe next week we'll talk about what's going on with second round picks too, if that hasn't already been resolved. But um the they want to put something in his contract that would be the first for Bengals, rookie or first round rookie. And he's like, I don't want to be the first one to do it. And it's a terrible look to sign your
Yeah.
second wide receiver to 30 million, stiff your best defensive player, and then refuse to sign your first round pick because he's not agreeing to this contract stipulation. It's baffling to me. And it's not like it would be very different if this was a team that had a whole roster of homegrown talent, had a strong record of drafting quality players, draft in and draft out, that you could rotate on defense and accept the fact that you're spending more to make Joe Burrow happy. They don't have that. They don't have that elite defensive roster. They don't have that elite young crop of players that allows you to spend this kind of money on a player who is very good, but is probably on a championship roster, a luxury, not a need. It's baffling. And their second round pick last year, Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, had a ton of concerns last year with character and commitment. And so the fact that you couldn't draft well last year means that you're now
As
overpaying in-house. Ridiculous.
as the Bengals often seem to do, they have character
Yeah,
issues over there in that franchise.
it's it's a real puzzle. And maybe Jermaine Burton's a great guy. I don't want to speak out of my mouth, but
Fair,
either
fair,
way,
fair.
all of this to say, I totally agree with you. Thank you for putting this on your list. I had a lot of conviction about this one in particular, and you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Silly season.
I I'm glad that you were so passionate about it. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I was like, are you gonna like this move and we're gonna have to fight about it? No, I'm glad we're in concert
yeah.
on
I
this.
mean, because yeah, you mentioned the Jamar Chase, the Joe Burrow, those were both also huge contracts, but like those are kind of things you have to do. Like people just pay quarterbacks, and people obviously when you're Jamar Chase, yes, you're going to make that much money. So yeah, when I get that T Higgins, and it sucks for T Higgins too because I know he was franchise tagged last year, and he was going to be franchise tagged again, and he really didn't want that, so they ended up, I guess, reaching this agreement here. Yeah, if you can just find a more affordable second receiver, and then you can divvy that money up to the other positions of need on your team, so you can actually win football games, that would be ideal.
Yeah, that's yeah. This is a an interesting choice from a team that did not make the playoffs last year. But
Right.
hey, pop off, I guess. Well, that's my number one, so we should move on with your number four as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is another. These make me feel bad. When I say this, I'm like, I don't like this player. I do like this player. I like this next player as well. The Raiders acquiring Geno Smith. I didn't
Yeah.
love this move. They traded pick 92, third round pick, fourth round pick. I can't do math.
90,
That's a third round pick.
92 is
That's a
is a
late
three.
third.
Yep. Late third. Yep.
I forget there's 32 teams and not 30 like NBA, so
Yep.
that
And
trips me
there's
up
the
sometimes.
compensatories, so typically those end up stretching the third
Mm,
anyway. So yeah.
fair. And then upon signing him, 2-year, $85 million extension. Oh,
Was
that
it
is a
two for
big contract.
85? Oh
85,
man.
85.5 actually. I
Oh,
I
now it's
I, I
ridiculous.
stiffed him on the point 0.5 because I didn't want to say it.
Ugh.
66.5 is guaranteed. So that's a lot of money. That's over $40 million. Like I just said with Joe Burrow, you have to pay your quarterback. That's what you do in the NFL. Geno Smith is old. He just kind of hit his stride late in his career, which I love for him, and I love what he did on the Seahawks, getting that chance and making that team relatively competitive. I thought that was great, and I have no problem with Geno Smith. I just think for a team like we mentioned with Max Crosby, he's not their guy, right? Max Crosby's in there. He's just a guy that they happen to acquire. Now he's making a lot of money for a team like we've already mentioned is probably not going to be relatively competitive. I know they had Aiden O'Connell. Maybe they still do as a backup, and maybe they've given up on his prospects. I know we had the Gardner Minshew thing last year. That was weird. It just feels like when you're a team in this position, especially with a guy like Brock Bowers, who had a fantastic rookie season, theoretically you want a quarterback that's going to develop alongside him. And an old quarterback is not going to do that. And it's going to prevent you from having a young quarterback that will do that.
Yeah, I think you make a couple interesting points because I actually considered this as like, did I like this move? Because I don't know if I don't think it made my list of five, but I have a lot of questions about the whole Sam. Well, let me make sure I'm not giving. Oh no, I have a different quarterback on here. I'm not a huge Sam Darnold fan necessarily as like getting the contract he got.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, but if it's really that much money, I definitely see your point. Brock Bowers is a good point. Definitely are not on the same timeline. I get that he has the relationship with Pete, but yeah, he's old. I when I was looking at his contract because I was considering putting him on my list, I was like, oh, he's like late 30s. He's a late 30s quarterback you're giving this contract to, who is
Hmm.
not necessarily like a Hall of Fame level player, and like
Right.
maybe being on the bench protects him from some wear. Okay, so maybe he's like a 33-year-old in NFL years. Like that's not much
Sure, sure,
better
sure.
for a guy who is not Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers and probably not playing into their 40s. So yeah, I was definitely confused by what the Raiders were trying to do timeline wise because I just don't see them breaking through. And I'll pose this question to you:
Hmm.
if the Raiders had signed Justin Fields for 2 years, 50 million, we'll say he's even making 25 million a year. Would you like that deal more than you like the Geno deal?
Yeah, I would like it way more.
Way more? Yeah.
I would
I
like it
yeah.
way more.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because
That's fair.
it's the future. It's about the future. The Raiders are not the now.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you got Ashton Genty at the top of this draft trying to build a
Right.
young offense around an old dude. It's a little
Yeah.
strange in that respect. Yeah.
That adds to my point, the Ashton thing.
Yeah. So you turned me on that one. I kind of liked it, but the more you brought it up, the more it's like, yeah, they do have actually a pretty young core that they're randomly aging up at the most important position. Puzzle on that one, no doubt. Um, okay, my number
Yes.
four,
Your
if
number
I
four,
may.
please. I would
Yes.
love it.
Oh, I know you're licking your chops over there for my number four.
Ready?
I'll just do the quarterback that I didn't like because I hate talking about this person, so I don't want to have to think about it anymore. Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. I just a riddle. I didn't like the Darnold signing either, and I'm actually surprised I didn't think about it for this list, but I think that now, granted, he's making not that much money this year. It might be, I think, 12.5 million somewhere in that pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Not more than Daniel Jones, which caught my eye, but
13.65 up to 19.
13.65. Wow. Bang. Okay. Well, if it's up to 19, then it's a
Why
total.
do I
He's
why do
robbing
I
you.
know? Because this is part of my number one, which I'll get
Let's
to.
go. Let's go. I mean, I actually won't say too much more because if your number one is the Steelers mindset to the offseason, I don't want to take that from you. Um, but I am puzzled by how the Steelers are considering themselves an all in team with nothing substantive to push all in on the offensive side of the ball. I feel like if they were truly a quarterback away, they would have been much closer with the team they had last year. Not to say that Russell Wilson was great, but it's not like that Russell Wilson to Aaron Rodgers bump is taking this team much higher, especially with, the Minka trade, right? If we agree is maybe not a downgrade, but at best a lateral move. And it's just, yeah, I don't love the thinking that's going on in terms of their timeline. And then, yeah, it's I don't like Aaron Rodgers either, and he's old. He's just old.
He's
I don't get
old.
it.
He's old and he hasn't played. Like he's been on the Jets for 2 seasons. He's barely played, and when he has played, he hasn't looked great. I
I
think
think
when
he
you
got through
evaluate,
most of a season with them last year, but was average.
yeah,
Um, and
he,
then
he
obviously,
wasn't
yes, was wiped out for the previous season. So
wasn't the Aaron Rodgers of old. Um, you said upgrade in terms of Russell Wilson to Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure it is an upgrade. It
wow,
may
that's brutal.
yeah, who would I rather have? I think I would say Russell Wilson, honestly, because the stuff on the field, but also Aaron Rodgers. He kind of at this point is kind of a personality you have to kind of deal with. And from what I understand, Mike Tomlin does not like dealing with personalities, so it's a strange choice. Yeah, so I'll say my number one since we're there. I phrased this as whatever the Steelers are doing.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Yep.
Aaron Rodgers, 1 year. This is why I have the numbers. 1 year, 13.65 million, 10 million guaranteed, worth up to 19 million based on incentives and such. Who's he going to throw it to? Well, they traded a second round pick for DK Metcalf, who I like. I like DK Metcalf. Big physical receiver, very fast for his size as well. One of my football moments I didn't mention earlier, the chase down on Buda Baker
Oh, that's a
when
great
he
one.
intercepted. What a great clip, right?
Yeah.
Before he's played a snap over there, 4 years, $132 million extension. That's huge, big number. And for whatever their prospects are, I'm not sure. And then I guess theoretically he was going to align with George Pickens, but then they traded George Pickens to the Cowboys for a third round pick next year and a fifth round pick as well. So it just seems like they don't know what's going on. And I know George Pickens has had like character kind of concerns in terms of his behavior off the field, kind of immaturity is what it seems like. And Mike Tomlin doesn't really play that game. But the talent, I mean, we've seen the talent. The guy can catch a football in ways that I didn't know were possible. So I think losing him, replacing him with DK, who's another player I like, rather than having both of them for Aaron Rodgers to do is kind of a loss for me. It just feels like moves. It feels like they went into this offseason without a plan. Like these all feel separate. These don't feel like cohesive moves towards a goal. These feel like, okay, I guess we'll do this now. Okay, now we'll do this. That doesn't really make sense with what we've already done, but oh well. And now they're coming into this season with a very strange team. I mentioned the Minka trade earlier for the Dolphins as a winner. I actually don't think the Steelers are like a huge loser in that trade.
Mhm.
Jalen Ramsey is a little older. I still think he's a great player, like I said. Johnny Smith, they have Fryermuth, so we'll see how they use both tight ends. But I trust Mike Tomlin. I don't really trust Arthur Smith, but I trust Mike Tomlin. Um, yeah, I just feel like it just feels like very choppy how they went through this offseason. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I my thoughts were in a very similar spot, and I think the more you laid out those moves, the more for me it was like, man, they really just were like, okay, what if we take one receiver in his mid to late 20s and replace him with another receiver in his mid to late 20s, and then we'll take one aging former top of the league quarterback and replace him with another age. It's just, yeah, all of these moves in isolation are gambling on the evaluation of these players. And I will say, I went and looked at the stats for Rodgers' season with the Jets, and like statistically very comparable to his last season with the Packers. When Kirby Joseph picked him off, and that was his last play in a Packers uniform. But I think that there's just so many moves that don't build to a cohesive identity, don't build to a cohesive timeline, don't build to a clear picture towards winning this year, don't necessarily signal a rebuild. Like it's all just, man, maybe if we get 5% better in 10 different ways, which none of that get improvement is guaranteed, as you said,
Right.
then maybe we'll be a Super Bowl team. And I just think that's a nonsense gamble. So I am glad you put this number one because I really do think their whole offseason is just,
It's
yeah.
worth mentioning that George Pickens is 3 years younger than DK Metcalf, which again in football years is a lot.
Come on, that's three good
uh,
seasons in a player's prime. Oh, and you
yeah,
gave it away. Oh man.
and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this kind of boils back to both of us having a Justin Fields signing on our good list. You had
Yeah.
Justin Fields. He
Yep.
could just be your quarterback, but instead you're going with the aging Aaron Rodgers. So don't love it.
Yep. Mike Tomlin is my sleeper. I think the Steelers maybe should move on from Mike Tomlin in the next 2-3 years candidate. If they had moved
Crazy
on from
take.
him this year, I know that's insane, but some talking heads who have infected me, I suppose, are like, well, how many 9 and 7 years can we do? And I kind of agree that when your team is winning but not changing the way they win or not pushing past their results, it's worth a conversation. I'm not saying Tom Thibodeau, right? To bring it back to basketball, where
There you
they
go.
get their team to the equivalent, like the conference championship, and then fire their coach because they don't win the conference championship. But if you truly believe there's something about the way your coach is leading or the way your coach is executing with the team that isn't working, make that change. And I wonder if that conversation will need to be had if after Aaron Rodgers, then it's the next veteran, right? If something happens with Sam Darnold where he's cut after year one and then Tomlin builds his franchise around it, I don't know. Since Roethlisberger, they tried Pickett. Pickett failed. I don't know. Their quarterback position is such a mystery, but point well
Mason
made.
Rudolph, welcome back.
Um, I always think of speaking of random players, Duck Hodges.
Duck
I think we've
Hodges,
talked about.
great pull. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think about Duck Hodges. I'm like, is Mason Rudolph
That is
Duck
like such
Hodges?
a random NFL player for both of us to know.
I know, but there's something about him that's so memorable because every time I think Mason Rudolph, like I see Mason Rudolph's face and think that guy looks like a Duck Hodges. Maybe they're the same person. Um, yeah, yeah. Okay, before I get lost in other references, that was your number one, right? So at this point,
My number
we've
one.
we've
I
both
still
shared our number ones and our fives
I
and fours, right?
Yes. We
Okay.
both just have three and two. So
Okay.
give me your number three.
Number three? I'll do the draft trade just because I feel like that's a little more boring, and I think two could be an interesting conversation. Um, there was a trade in the draft. There were not very many trades up high, but there was one that really caught my eye. Because it caught everyone's eye, caught everyone by surprise, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars trading up from 5 to 2 to take Travis Hunter. And here's what changed hands. So, in order to get the number two pick, they also received a 2025 fourth and a 2025 sixth. They gave away the number five pick, their first rounder next year, a second rounder this year, and they gave away a worse fourth. So they moved up in the fourth round and received a sixth rounder to move up 3 spots in the first, give up a second, give up a first next year. A massive haul for Travis Hunter. Um, there's a pretty hilarious interview with their GM, James Gladstone, where he's like, the future of football is this player. We didn't just trade for a player, we traded for the future. And it's like, okay, man, it's a game. It's a game. But pop off.
That's
Um,
wild.
he's like, we traded for the moon. Like Heed the Call podcast. After you listen to all of our episodes 6 times in a row, go listen to Heed the Call podcast. They have a great bit where like they'll play this inspirational music and then do a James Gladstone speech where they'll like, I think that Kenny Pickett will change the Browns forever, and it's like such a great bit. But
That's pretty good.
it's a ridiculous. It's a ridiculous to me. I don't want to say ridiculous. I'm
I know
getting too
I didn't
unethical.
realize that was the haul. I mean, that would have made my list if I realized for sure.
Yeah, it's a huge. When I was thinking about the James Pierce Jr. trade after we stopped talking about it, this thought came into my head. Who is the worst defensive end in the league that you would be okay having given up 2 first round picks to acquire, spending 2 first round picks to acquire that defensive end? I How long is that list? I can't be
Not
longer than
long.
15, right?
It's
Yeah. I
not
mean,
long.
yeah, it's hard to look at that and go, yeah, of course. There's like, you know, 30 guys that I would spend 2 firsts on. Maybe if you said, okay, it's a top 10 player at a premium position, fine. Well, Travis Hunter's maybe 2 players. So maybe he's worth two
Maybe.
firsts.
Haven't
Maybe
seen it in
he's
the NFL.
we haven't seen it. Maybe he's only one of them. And then I would ask you, what wide receivers are worth 2 first round picks? Okay, maybe Jamar. You look at like the
Justin
not
Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson. Back in the day, Julio Jones was a huge trade up, if I recall. You
Hmm.
know, like yeah, maybe wide receivers, corners. I don't know how many corners you're trading from 5 to 2 to take. Right, that's just not the way the position's valued.
Yeah.
Um, and so
I mean, Pat Surtain came out as a beast, and he was drafted like 13th or something, and like everyone knew he was going to be awesome, and he is awesome. And he just won defensive player, like you said. No one was like, I'm going to trade my first round pick next year to get this guy who I know is going to be a monster.
Yeah, I think unless I'm missing someone from like last year or the year before, do you know who the next highest drafted corner ever is?
Oh goodness. Can you give me a hint?
He's a Lions legend, and I put legend in heavy air quotes.
Lions legend, legend in air quotes. That sounds scary. I mean, you say Lions, I think of Darius Slay.
Okay,
I have no
second
idea how high
rounder.
Darius Slay was. Yeah, I was like, I don't know when that
Yeah,
guy was drafted. Let you say legend in air quotes. That's
he was
throwing me
not
off.
good. He was very bad.
Yeah, that's makes sense.
He is not a
I
Lion anymore, and he was drafted while I believe you were a fan,
oh man.
right at the start of your
Oh,
fandom.
was it Jeff?
It was Jeff Okuda.
Yeah,
Jeff
it was
Okuda,
Jeff.
I
Okay.
believe, unless
Yeah.
I'm mistaken, I'm pretty confident third was the highest anyone had ever gone.
I didn't realize
And
Jeff Okuda was drafted third. That's
Jeff
crazy.
Okuda was drafted with the third overall pick
Yeah.
and was not good. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a corner that's overtaken him since. And yeah, even if Jeff Okuda was elite, um, people would still talk about positional value, which I don't necessarily believe a ton in. But
Yeah, I mean,
um,
if it was Sauce Gardner you drafted it to, you'd be like, yes. But
yes,
like,
oh for
that's
sure,
a big, that's a big leap to make at this
it's
point.
a huge leap to make. And so okay, there is a world where this player is worth this. Oh, Derek Stingley as well. Sorry, Derek Stingley Jr. went third
In
in
front of Sauce.
2022 in
Yeah,
front of Sauce.
I remember that and thinking, oh, they're dumb. The Texans are dumb. Derek Stingley is an awesome player too.
Yeah,
Um,
essentially signed the same contract as Sauce just signed for 30 million a year just earlier in the offseason. So
yeah, 1 year
comparable
less, I
guys.
think.
Yeah, it's like 3 for 90 versus like
Yeah,
four,
yeah, yeah.
120 and change or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I to me was just so I get it. Maybe you think he's going to be the best of the best ever, but if he's not a top 10 corner and top 10 wideout, I think it's hard to
Yeah,
say this trade is worth it,
for sure.
especially when it's not like you went from 10 to 2 to make this move in a
Hmm.
relatively light draft. You went from 5 to 2,
Yeah,
3 spots.
yeah,
And I looked at, even we look at the James Pierce Jr. trade. That was a pretty big swing, but that was at least 20 picks up the board. Um, just tough to reconcile. So we'll see. But
it's a
a
lot of
huge risk
assets.
for a first year GM and a first year coach on a team that's still building itself. T Law better be really good this year, or this is going to look like a bad deal. That's all I'm
It's
going to
like,
say.
did you trade up to get Randy Moss and Champ Bailey? We'll see. Um,
Yeah, I hope you did. Right.
but
Um,
I also part of it I want to mention that I don't think is as important. I think Abdul Carter is going to be a freak show.
yeah,
And he was at three. So if he is a freak show and Travis Hunter's like, okay, this is going to look even worse.
that's true. If the guy they took it at 5, everyone was penciling Mason Graham. The Browns
Mhm.
stood pat after that trade, took him at 5. I feel like I will be watching Mason Graham's career. Defensive tackle is a less flashy position, but if he's a high
Right.
impact D tackle for 10, 12 years, you're going to be thinking about that when, Travis Hunter is, maybe Travis Hunter does change the league. I don't think that will happen, but maybe it does. And then we're all eating our words, but what a gamble.
I
What a
can't
gamble.
say I watched a ton of Colorado football. What I will say is I think the level of energy and stamina and grit you have to be a two-way player in college will not even come close to how you would have to do it in the NFL. Like, how do you have the endurance to survive an NFL game when you're on the field the entire time?
It's a
I
good point.
don't see how that's possible. I don't
Yeah,
really even understand how it was possible in college, but there's no way that I feel like it will translate to the league. But
that's a good
maybe
point.
I'm
It's a
wrong and
harder
I look
game.
like an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, I am very okay with being wrong because it would
Yeah.
mean something really awesome's happening.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, for sure.
um, it's like an Occam's razor thing. What's the more likely outcome? Well, you bet 2 first round picks on the less likely outcome. So we'll see.
We'll see.
Um, okay, your number
Three.
3 left? Okay, what's your number 3?
Yes. My number three, speaking of Abdul Carter, the Giants. Not Abdul Carter. I love Abdul Carter. I think he's gonna be awesome. I just have written the Giants QB situation. Um, Here's why. Okay. They drafted Jackson Dart in the first round. out of Ole Miss. I think most people at the time thought that was a little high. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, Shadur, he's going to follow the Giants all the way down here. That's awesome." And then he was a fifth round pick. That's a whole nother story we'll have to get
That's
into
yeah, that's its own
sometime.
episode. Yeah.
That was a crazy thing. Um, do I think Jackson Dart is going to be a horrible NFL player? No. Do I think he was worth where he was drafted? Maybe a little high. Coming from kind of a lesser known program, which to be said, Josh Allen out of Wyoming. I mean, that guy is awesome. So it does happen. Um,
Because he was from Ole Miss, right?
Ole Miss, yeah.
Giants legend Eli Manning, right? So
hmm Which makes more sense. That way for sure. I think the issue is that you draft that guy, and then you also sign Russell Wilson to a 1 year deal. I don't imagine to be a backup, but maybe I'm wrong. Jameis Winston, 2 years. I I Jameis Winston is an interesting player. Um, a fascinating player. He's a guy that will happily sit on the bench, but if you plug him in, he will do his best, and it will be fun to watch. And off the field is a whole nother conversation.
I was gonna say, you know
Uh,
this too, right? Okay, yeah, yeah.
that's yeah. So I'm not gonna go there, but it just feels like you're creating, I don't know, maybe an unnecessary like pressure on your rookie quarterback because either Russell Wilson's going to start and you hope that Jackson Dart eventually takes over, kind of maybe similar to Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix last year, um, or you're going to have Jackson Dart play, but you're like, if you're not good enough, we have these guys ready to come in and like, yeah, it just feels weird. It feels like a weird decision. I feel like they should have just done one or the other. It's strange they did both. I think I'm not a huge proponent of like the Jordan Love thing where you get drafted and sit there for 3 years. And maybe that turned Jordan Love into a great player, and that's why I mean, I don't know if he's a great player, but he started his QB career when he was playing very well. And maybe part of that is because he sat for so long. We will never know. But I don't love spending a first round pick on a guy that I don't know if he'll start. Um, and if he does, it's going to be a weird situation.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen a big shift in the NFL where you're rarely sitting that first round quarterback for a year anymore. Um, Worked for Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes is also truly a one of one player, so that's not
Right?
necessarily a meaningful comparison. And to your point, I feel like to me the weird part is Russell Wilson. I
Yeah.
would completely understand Jameis Winston being like a replacement level guy who maybe you start him for 6 weeks and then sub in Jackson Dart and it makes sense. Or, hey, if Jackson Dart's struggling, hey, we're just going to take you out and we're going to put in Jameis Winston. He's not like a threat to your job, whatever. We're just going to give you a few weeks. Russell Wilson kind of supplanted Justin Fields last year.
Right.
So he's, a phrase I like is progress stopper. I've heard that one,
hmm
around. And I
That's a good
feel
one.
like Russell Wilson's going to be a bit of he just muddies the tone of the thing. To have three of these quarterbacks in one room, just like you said, I think this is a great pick because it's one of those things where, well, we didn't expect much of this team. So, who cares what they do with their quarterback room? But by that same token, they're never going to be a team that we have to care about if they don't treat their quarterback position more sensibly. Um, and so that's a good point.
Their
And I
quarterback
think
room
that's
has been great over the past several years, right? So
Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito. I mean,
shining example of how to do quarterbacks.
loaded, loaded. I mean, it's a shame we aren't doing this in like 2022 when or 23 when he got that extension from the Giants because that
Oh
Daniel Jones
man.
combo would be crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that'd have been
miserable.
a tough one.
Yeah.
Do you have number two left? Is that all?
Yes. I do want to throw out just because we were talking about Giants quarterbacks. I didn't care because I was like, oh man, this team is so doomed at quarterback, it doesn't matter. But like,
The
and
Colts
maybe
or
I'll be surprised, but the Colts are just tough. I could see
yeah.
a world where Daniel Jones fixes it. I could see it. Maybe Anthony Richardson
I,
turns a corner. I
I'm an
could see it.
Anthony Richardson believer. I believe.
I
We'll see.
I don't. There's a lot of like character talk after he took himself out of a game for a play. Did you hear that story and everything?
Mm-mm.
There was like a play where like he came out of the game for like a third down, and then they asked him after the game, "Why'd you do that?" And he was like, "Man, I was just so tired." And they were like, Why would you say that? Why
Oh,
would you say
that's a little crazy.
yeah?
Yeah.
And in the spirit of ethical ball, right? If a player thinks that they're injured, I understand
Yeah,
doing what
absolutely
you
should
need
get off the
medically.
field, but yeah.
It's maybe
The
that
phrasing of
warrants
it in the interview, yeah.
yeah. I feel like, maybe that just speaks to the coaching. I don't know. A lot of stuff coming out of Indianapolis. I don't want to totally doom this team. Maybe those quarterbacks will be fine, but it's one of those situations where it's hard to look at it as an outside observer and say, yeah, there's a lot of hope there at the QB position. But
Hmm.
you never know. And I don't want to be too negative necessarily. I know I go big on my takes and I have extreme vocalizations, and that's not as ethical as I want to be. So I'll deliver this last take ethically. Um, Cooper Cup had a great run with the Rams. Giving him 15 million a year over 3 years feels like an awful lot to me.
He's old.
Um, I was looking at the cap numbers on this deal. Let's see, do I still have them pulled up? I do. On Spot Rack or whatever we call it. And they say that one of the nice things they do is they list like the potential outs based on dead cap and stuff.
Mm.
And the potential out is that you cut him in 2026, and it's a 1 year, $17.5 million deal with 8 million in dead cap. Um, Currently a cap hit of 9 million this year, so that's not terrible. I just don't see a world where Cooper Cup, being an off injured guy in these last few years, he had a brilliant triple crown season and then hasn't necessarily been like a true difference maker. You know, I get wide receiver contracts are inflated, but a long term investment. If you'd said this was 1 year, 15 million, I would have gotten it. If you said this was 1 year, 15 million with escalators to get to 20, I would have said, okay, take the flyer. Maybe you get a great season out of him. But I just don't see how you bring in Sam Darnold, you get rid of Metcalf, and then you bring in Cooper Cup. And I know they've got Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's like a talented young receiver, but this one just really puzzles me. I feel like this is a classic example of a team investing in a player 1 year or 2 years too late. And they're going to get them past their prime and not those last couple of years of their prime. And to me, it's just a missed opportunity to maybe shell out a little bit more for a younger player or take a gamble on two or three younger players and see which one of them can stick. Maybe this is a need you address in the draft and spend that money elsewhere. Um, yeah, just I get he's like a hometown guy, so maybe that was part of the appeal, but just a real question mark for me. How about any thoughts on this move, or do you want to jump straight into your number two?
Yeah, I thought the number was a little bit, not the number I really don't even care about because, like you said, wide receivers inflated. It really is the years. Older player, 3 years. No idea what Cooper Cup's gonna look like in 3 years. Um, 3 years ago, he had his triple crown season, and it was
Yep.
awesome. And that was a long 3 years ago. So I can only imagine it's going to be a long 3 years from now. We'll see. Jackson Smith and Jigba took over the wide receiver one duties last year. I think he's going to be awesome. Love that for them. Lost Metcalf, like you said, traded him. Um, I guess I don't really know why. Like they didn't want to pay him. He didn't want to be the number two to JSN. I don't really know the reasoning there of just not having DK Metcalf instead alongside JSN. Tyler Lockett is ancient, but he also left this offseason as well. So they're down some receiving threats for sure. I think this is a good inclusion just because, yeah, the length of the contract and the age in the NFL is a scary combination for a team that, you know, it's not like they're not pushing the NFC Championship every year. This
Yeah.
is not an over the top addition. So it's, yeah, a little questionable.
This is one of those like yeah, talking about your Ravens pick with Hopkins, right? If if the Ravens did this as like a 2 year, maybe a little cheaper, like 25 deal with Cup, I'd be like, yeah, you're probably like, I expect probably you'll get more out of Cup than you would out of Hopkins, but you're not going to get so much out of Cup that he turns you from a good to great, or so much out of Cup that you're going to go from a good to great team. He's 32, which I didn't
Yeah,
realize. This really strikes me as a 1 year deal in disguise. That's the
that's
only
it.
way that I could explain it.
Yeah, it's so weird because when you say 32, I'm like, oh, that's not that bad. But like in basketball, people retire at 38, 39, 40. Football, it's like, if you're still in the league at 35, it's a miracle. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 35 for a player of Cooper Cup's like resume, 35 is about the year you're out, right? And
yeah,
you're paying solid money for that.
yeah.
And again,
Uh,
contracts overinflated, but Just a
Also,
surprise.
I mean, could have been a lifer, right? That would have been cool, but
That
now
would have
we're
been well. I think that speaks volumes too. Is the Rams know him? He's in the building. He's been a trooper. I know Puka's kind of phased him out, um, but they weren't willing to offer him enough to keep him there.
Super
And
Bowl
that
MVP. Did he win that Super Bowl MVP?
I will look into that while you share your number two.
My number two. While you look into that, my number two least favorite deal of the offseason, similar ilk as yours. The Patriots signing Stephon Diggs, 3 years,
Ooh,
69
good
million.
pick.
Yeah, it makes my list for similar reasons. The Patriots are obviously a worse team than the Seahawks. I love Drake May so far in his career. I think he's been very good for, what you draft him for and all that, and the lack of talent he's had around him. Um, did you have that fact? You want to do that? Divvy that out real
Cooper
quick.
Cup was MVP. Good call.
Yeah. So, man, I would love for him to retire with that franchise, Aaron Donald-esque, but alas. So yeah,
Yes.
Stephon Diggs. I think the issue I have with it, not the player, although there's some whatever happened this offseason with the pink stuff in the bag. What was the
Yep.
pink stuff? I don't know. He's had not character issues, but issues with organizations. Kind of his departure from Minnesota over to Buffalo, Buffalo to Houston. Both of those were not entirely pretty. And then now he's here. $20 million is a lot for any player in the NFL. We mentioned wide receiver is usually amped up. That's fine. The issue I have with this is that Drake May, again, really young, um, and these are not star players by any means. Perhaps the worst receiving group in the NFL, you could say. But Pop Douglas, Jalen Polk, these young guys they have over there, I think you
You say
just have to.
Pop Douglas?
Yeah, his name's Demario Douglas, but his nickname's Pop. Um,
I've never heard that before. I've heard of
yeah,
Demario Douglas, but Pop
look
Doug, I
look
love that.
look it up. It's true. I'm not making that up. Um, but I just think like you want to develop your receiving core with your quarterback, kind of like I mentioned earlier with the Geno Smith and Brock Bowers thing. And this is kind of the opposite of that, where you have young quarterback, old receiver. And I mean, not old. Old is a stretch. He's not that old, but he is going to be past his prime when I think the Patriots are kind of kicking in the gear in Drake May's prime. So it's just a lot of money. And not only is it that, but it now is a lack of developmental opportunity for the young receivers you have in the building. If you don't believe in those young receivers, I would have liked it if they got another young receiver, or even like a T. Higgins, um, somebody that is on the younger side, closer to the quarterback's timeline.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great pick. I know they were looking at like Chris Godwin, who's another older receiver, and eventually went back to the Bucks. But yeah, this is one of those that I feel like there's always that team in free agency that has just a ton of cap. And the Patriots were spending left and right. They were the ones who signed Carlton Davis away from the Lions, right? They handed out the single biggest free agent contract this offseason to Milton Williams. So, like, yeah, they're spending a ton of money. Some of those guys are a little closer to the timeline. Stephon Diggs is not exactly like touted as a. I want to say he's the guy in the. Have you ever seen the Vikings locker room video where it's like, who's the one player you'd never let like date your daughter? And they asked this to all the guys in the room, and they're like, Stephon Diggs. Like
I
they
haven't,
just
I haven't seen it, but without seeing it, I feel like I could confidently say that, yeah, that was probably Stephon Diggs.
yeah, that was probably Stephon. So like, yeah, I just it'd be one thing if yeah, again, this is one of those moves where it almost feels like, okay, maybe I would have just shuffled some of the wide receiver moves that were made. Like if you're Seattle and you really think you're one move away, Stephon Diggs probably has a higher ceiling at this point than Cooper Cup, or something. I don't know. I think a
Yeah.
lot of the wide receiver contracts, older guys baffle, and it's possible that he'll be strong, but even then, okay, let's say they're a wild card team. Year two of the deal, he's 1 year older, right? There's a chance he's disgruntled. We don't know. And
Always.
you know, also I think it's important to state that I didn't love his Met Gala fit either. So I think
It's very
that's
relevant. I
yeah,
often don't like Met Gala fits. They're
yeah,
always
that's
bad.
fair. His was just like a giant fur coat thing.
Sure.
Anyway, I always struggle to talk about players' characters without having met them, right? How much of this is distributed by
Right, right, right.
teams that want to sustain whatever. So even putting the character aside, it's a big contract for a player who's coming off a serious injury. on a completely different timeline than the core of your team. And it just feels like a classic case of we have too much money to spend, so we're going to spend it. That's how I feel on that move. I think that's a good list. And that's the end of your list. And my list has already ended. So that brings us to the conclusion of our best and worst. Any last thoughts on these? Or sorry, not best and worst. Most confidence and least confidence in leading to team success, or still head or shaking head. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
We can.
We're working on the name. We'll come up with it.
We'll yeah.
By next
Come back
off
next
season,
year.
we'll
Yeah.
have we'll have
Let's go.
nailed
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Hey, comment below what you think we should name our sort of
There you go. There's
yeah,
so many.
what's it?
There's like one person that's made 8 comments for every time you've said comment below.
I love that thought. No, I whatever the most ethical name for this segment would be, please comment.
Mm,
But yeah, this has been a blast to do episode 1. Coming
yeah.
up, we're gonna do some conference by conference, division by division previews. I think there will be a spinning wheel involved. We're gonna get a little more in depth on each team's off season. As
Maybe not
we
as
are
in depth on each move as these ones. Like these were
sure.
very specific moves we wanted to talk about. But yeah, give a broader team look for sure.
I'd say maybe the way we talked about the Steelers would be a good example of,
Right.
how do we like their moves? And then maybe give a bit of a prediction, maybe not record specific, but where in their division do you think they'll end up? Might be a
But
good
there
way to
will
think
be a
that.
record. We will have a pod where we predict standings and awards. That's like one of my favorite things to do.
Okay, we'll do standings and awards. Hopefully we've got time. The Hall of Fame game between the Lions and the Chargers 2 weeks away. So
Yeah, huge.
football is on the horizon. Thank you for joining us for episode 1 of the journey. To end off, Damon, I figured I have this paper football and I was going to try to
Yeah,
shoot it through the goalposts, so to
yeah.
speak.
I'm gonna
Um,
make a goal. This okay. This is the time when if you're an audio listener, pull over to the side of the road, turn on those hazards, because this is gonna be worth watching. And while you're there, like, comment, subscribe.
yep, that's my pre kick rituals. I tell myself, oh, I hope everyone's liking and commenting and subscribing and to both Ethical Ball podcasts. And I hope this will go through the uprights.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've made a field goal here, or a field goal post here, rather, with my hands.
I'm
And
I'm I'm
Jared's gonna,
showing the camera the
yeah.
paper ball just so that there is record that if this misses the camera field of view entirely, I
You
did
you
attempt
may
it.
have to you may have to drop the Ford Field background for this one.
Oh, and you know what? I will drop the Ford Field background. I've been at Ford Field for those who haven't known, but I will go to no background. Wow. What
Huge.
a humble, lovely home.
I didn't know
Um
you could teleport.
uh all right. Oh, those are some narrow posts right there. This is this
I'm
is this
I'm
is worth a
trying I'm
shot.
trying I'm trying to figure out how to put it without not being able to see you. Because the way I
No,
had
this
it,
is
I was
good.
like,
This
I
is good.
actually
This is good.
can't see you.
Okay. Thanks for listening, and the kick is up.
I think that dinked off right post.
Off the right post.
Off the right post. Narrow miss.
So would you say it's good, or would you say
No good.